Are they gonna give me some pancake? Like, can I take the shine off my head?
No. All right, ready?
Go.
Thank you guys for coming to the first Homebrew Talk today. We're glad you're here. That means you're at least interested, which is awesome. I've said this multiple times. There's a guy running out now because apparently he's not.
I have had enough. I'm out of here. If I hear one more homebrew talk with some guy getting stoked about it, like, I'm out of here.
No, so we're just gonna kind of go through what it takes to build a pinball machine. We'll start off kind of with like the I guess your standard steps of kind of what most people would do. We'll talk a little bit about the kits that I sell through Trident Pinball to help get people started if they're not sure where to start. Make it hopefully a little bit easier for them to get into it. And then we'll leave some time for questions and hopefully provide some awesome customer service and answers.
And I should say too, like, we're going to show you like the fundamentals of what the chunks are in actually making a machine. So we're not going to take you through the entire process of getting the machine rolling, but really here it's like, you know, the idea of we have a play field, we have electronics, we have wiring, we have things like that. We just want to show you that there is I'm getting a little feedback here, Dave. You got that one? Okay. But the idea of like there's reasonable path going from you've got an idea and here's how you can kind of step through this whole process. So we've been talking about wanting to do this kind of thing for a while because we stand out in the booth and we do this conversation dozens of times a day. Like, oh, it's super easy. You start with just a play field and some electronics and then you have pinball. And the goal was to say, like, you know, Ernie's done a great job with actually making these kits that are going to get you started with what it takes to actually get rolling, and then pairing that with our electronics. Like, and then later, towards the end of this whole thing, in a couple hours from now, we're going to have the chance to have Anthony Van Winkle's going to come up, and we're going to pair the process of downloading the Mission Pinball framework and bringing some life to what we've got here. So.
This will be better.
Yeah.
Sounding.
Okay. So we're
Check,
doing
check.
little mic change.
Hey, this sounds a lot better, right? Yeah, now everyone doesn't have to like squint their eyes to hear better. All right. You can leave that connected. Just put on your...
Is that better? Dude, I feel so taken care of here. Like, this is awesome. Okay, so where do you want to start? You want to dive into your kits, talk about the whole process of actually like making the commitment to starting a pinball machine?
I think let's start first with kind of the steps of where you would kind of start with a pinball machine, and then we'll come back to the kits and kind of walk through what's included. I think first, the best place to start is you get a crazy idea that you want your own pinball machine, you want to build one. You know, most of the time, and I say for mine, was I wanted a theme that did not exist. And there's probably no chance that there's going to be a manufacturer that makes that theme, so I'm like, I'll just do it myself. It's easy. And it is pretty easy, but there's a lot that goes into it.
Well, I'd say that like we say easy a lot, and I think the word I'm trying to use more often is it's straightforward. Okay, it's not like this crazy wizardry. It's like if you can follow some process. We've tried to do a really good job of documenting core concepts of like wiring, what gauges of wire to use, what some things you can, if you can follow some guidance, you're not going to be meandering down some crazy paths. You're going to focus on actually like what it's going to take to get your crazy idea out of your head. When I talk like this, it gets super loud for me. All right. So the crazy idea that you want to make for a pinball machine, we've seen a lot of really cool stuff come to life. And the one example I've used a lot is Steve Condris, who's from the Pinball Room. He's got a YouTube channel. A lot of you have watched that. He had his Stairway to, or his Led Zeppelin game he wanted to make, and he had the literal Stairway to Heaven that he wanted to have in that game. You know, that's one of those like key mechs that like the whole design, the whole like concept of making that Led Zeppelin game was around that idea of making this mech. I mean, it was incredible. Like, it's a whole, you know, step that actually, you know, a ball gets like, give me the ball gets, you know, attached to the step using some magnets and moves it up. Eventually, like, you're loading up all the steps, and then it releases that game. Once you've qualified it all, it releases all those balls into the game. It's fantastic. But again, at the time, talking about like which manufacturers are going to make a game, it didn't seem like anybody was going to be making a Led Zeppelin pinball machine. And I think by the time, just about the time he was finished, Stern releases their game. But the the mechanics of that staircase are far more than would be commercially viable to exist in a commercial game. So the chance to do some things in homebrew that just wouldn't make any sense to do in a commercial game, that's one of the things I love seeing most about, you know, what ideas are in people's heads and what actually turns into being a component of a homebrew pinball machine. So, yeah.
Yep. I think once you have that crazy idea and everybody tells you you're insane for wanting to build your own pinball machine, then it's kind of where do I go next? And there's a couple different paths that can be taken. There's a visual virtual pinball side using Visual Pinball X. A lot of people will start there, design a layout. You have the opportunity to use an existing game to start out and then build from that. Right. And then there's people, which I kind of fall into this lane, is I just get a whitewood with some existing ramps or ball guides or cardboard, and you can actually just tape them on the playfield and get a ball and throw it until you come up with a layout that you like.
Yeah, and I'd say like I'm in the same boat. You know, I've got the idea in my head, and I want to get it down onto something that I can start to experience. You know, so what is good about the kits that Ernie's done here is like the lower third is pretty common. You know, it's pretty much the same on a lot of games. You'll see some slight variation in the angles and stuff that are used on the slingshots, but that doesn't matter until you've got the rest of the geometry figured out, knowing where balls are returning and things like that. So if you can get to the point to where you can get this lower third figured out, the byproduct of that is you've now got your power supplies all hooked up. You've got your like fast boards, for example, like plugged in and working, and you've got it electrically like action. A button pressed makes a flipper move. Now the idea of starting to, you know, hot glue some cardboard into place or like borrowing parts from other games. Now you're starting to mock up what that game experience starts to look like and stuff. So, you know, when we had first met, like I've told this story a bunch, but like, you know, I saw a post on Pinside, which is a big pinball hobbyist website, that Ernie was going to make pinball kits, and I'm like, awesome. Like, I need to talk to you because I wanted to do kits. When I wanted to do it, it was earlier in the whole process where the software frameworks weren't as mature yet. So the idea of like fast tracking the process of getting them more quickly to a very challenging software problem like just didn't make sense, you know. So now Ernie, one of the greatest things he's done is you're getting this this nut computer or some variation of this with software preset and ready to go. So you'll be able to take that paired with the hardware, follow the instructions of assembling that, and then you're flipping, you're moving, you know. And so you're getting to the fun part of actually doing the project like on top of the play field. So that I think the big catalyst was like finding the way to like get you to a satisfying result more quickly, because the last thing you want to see is like you take on this big challenge and you sit there beating your head against the wall trying to figure out how to crimp wires and things like that. But if you know that you can follow what Ernie's done in the kits and more quickly get to the fun part, like that's what we're trying to do, trying to build momentum with the projects and stuff. So,
yeah, and I think that from people that have purchased the kit, that's the biggest thing that I've been told is that it's a huge head start, that, you know, they weren't sure where to start, and they kind of came with everything that allows you to, I'm going to say quickly, and take that with a grain of salt because it's not necessarily quickly, but you can quickly put it together and have something that's flipping and ready to go. I guess we could start walking through kind of what.
Like start from like unboxing?
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's do it.
So everything on the table in front of me is pretty much is what would come with the kit. There's a couple things that are still in the box just because it was kind of duplicates. I'll start from the bottom. Actually, maybe first, I'll show you the whitewood.
Let me hold that for you for a second.
I'm going to cover myself up. So the whitewood here is mostly based on a modern stern. And will accept all modern parts from most of the manufacturers. It's a standard Italian lower third. There are opportunities if somebody wants a wide body kit. You know, I can do that. If they already have a cut file, I can cut it. So this is what would come standard, but there's some customization. You know, if your group is crazy and you want to do a wide body, that can be done. I'm saying that because there's somebody in the crowd today that purchased the wide body kit.
Thank you.
Just to give them a hard time. But yeah, no, so this is customizable. This is kind of where you would start. Like I said, you could screw holes in this, screw ramps to it, cut things out, and start and just throw a ball on it. You don't necessarily have to have it flipping just to come up with a layout. And once something feels good, that's where you would kind of keep going, okay, I like that shot, until you change your mind 500 times and the ending playfield looks completely different.
And this is like a physical sketch pad. Like, you know, the idea that you're going to get it right the first time, like, you're insane. Like, that's not actually going to be done the first time. But once you get things on there and you've wired things up and you've gotten them flipping and you've tried laying some stuff out, you're going to drill holes, you're going to fill holes, you're going to move things around. Like, it's part of the process. And I think I'm saying that specifically because I think sometimes we get kind of locked up in the idea of like, no, I got to get it right the first time. You know, I don't want to have to cut another piece of whitewood. Like, you're going to cut another piece of whitewood, just be comfortable with that. And these become something that you mount on your wall in your shop or your garage as like trophies for like the journey that you went through. You know, you can see how that mech kind of shifted across the playfield through a few iterations, but you don't know what that is until you've done it, you know? So again, like having this physical sketch pad that's, you know, you can start like physically moving things around on, it's critical to the process, especially the first time. You know, you're gonna find things that you go to by default. All the best pinball designers in the world have their go-to conventions, the way they like to have their in-lanes and out-lanes arranged and things like that. But your first game, you don't know what any of that is. So the goal here is just to get you started.
Yep. So we'll kind of just go through this. The other main reason why we wanted to do this was kind of to demystify what it actually takes to build a pinball machine. I mean, there's not a lot of parts on this table to get something flipping. There's a trough, some slingshots, 2 lower flippers, you know, the flipper bats, the lane guides, the rubbers, the post, and some switches. There's 5 switches there, and that's pretty much all you need to get started to have a game flipping. The next part is,
I guess power supplies?
Yeah,
Let's dig into that.
Power supplies. So you have a 12-volt system. Fast uses a 12-volt system and a 48-volt system to run everything.
We run all that through like a power filter board here. So this is designed to put in the fuse protection that is needed. Also, we try to make it self-documenting. So there's all of our wiring guides. Like if you go to fastpinball.com/wiring or just Google pinball wiring, I think we come up like #1 now, which is super cool. A lot of this was the idea that like if you can go through like a first step with electronics and basically follow that guidance that we have, hook up the power supplies to our filter board. Let them yell here for a second. Nelson, should we help find Nelson here? Okay, so this first step of hooking up your power supplies to the filter board, you're not hooking up any other electronics yet, but in the process, you're gonna learn how to crimp some wires, you're gonna follow some of our guidance on these things, you're gonna get your meter out. This is one of those points where you're like, oh, I don't have a meter yet, so go to Amazon, buy a meter, because you're gonna use it. You may as well like get a good set of wire cutters and crimpers and stuff at the same time. We try to provide guidance on like different, on our website, stuff like that, about different tools that you can use. But the first goal is like, if you get the power supplies hooked up, and then you can test the output voltages, like now we know you've been able to crimp some wires, you've been able to hook up power supplies, you've been able to test output voltages with your meter, like call it a night. That was a good productive evening. Pick up the next day and the next step in the whole process. And that's gonna be a matter of like hooking up, like this is our Neuron controller. This is kind of the brains of the system. You're gonna connect this to your computer, like in this case, a computer like this, and that's gonna be your gateway to the rest of the hardware that it takes to actually get your whole game moving. I guess how do we want to like go from here? Should we just kind of keep scrolling through the hardware here? Okay, so let's talk about these. I talked about the controller. There's 2 ways you can work with it. You can take like a Raspberry Pi computer. We set it up so you can actually seat it right into here. So you can take advantage of like the onboard power management, things like that. You can mount a fan to the back of it and stuff for proper cooling and things. But the idea here is this is the interface between whatever your software layer is to the physical layer. So from this board, you're gonna then break out further. So we've got a board, again, I'm unpackaging this like I just got the kit myself. So we have a board like this. This is our Fast IO 3208 board. This board has 32 switches on it and 8 output drivers and stuff. So this configuration lines up perfectly with what the lower third is on a game. So these output drivers, that's going to be, let's see, we got the trough eject, left sling, right sling, the left flipper main coil, left flipper hold coil, right flipper main, right, the inverse of that, and then the auto launcher and stuff like that that you could work into the game. So just getting this one board, which comes in the kits and stuff that people are using, now you've got that lower third like flipping. So this connects to this Neuron controller with 2 network cables. You're coming out of here, you're going into here, you go out of here and come back. So the whole FAST system is based on a loop network. So while a lot of the classic games are a driver board that has everything all in one place, you're basically amassing the driver board and switch input board that you need by just continuing to add different versions of these boards and stuff like that. So as your game advances, you might add another one of these for another 32 switches and 8 drivers, or there's different configurations based on like what your game needs. In addition to that, then there is a variety of our expansion boards. So these expansion boards are focused on the non-timing critical, non-dangerous stuff. So while this is firing coils and controlling switch inputs, there's also like a watchdog timer as well. So if you have a game running 48 volts and your computer hiccups and locks up, if you don't talk to our boards in enough time, it's going to shut down the high voltage. So that way you don't get a coil locked on if your computer freaks out or something. So we really tried to build in the protection that you may not even realize that you need yet. So by default, like you've got the watchdog protection and you've got this loop network. So wait for it. Oh my gosh. Three. This might be a good time to go get a drink or text your family, let them know you're going to be okay. Well, that's me. I won.
All right, that's it for the 3:30 drawing, but not to worry, as we will be doing another one around 5 or 5:30. Now, I do want to say we are running low on tickets. Once they're sold, they're sold. First come, first served. We also have some amazing seminars and tournaments lined up tonight, not to mention a costume contest at 4 p.m. If you're interested in participating in the costume contest, meet
I don't even remember what it was. Okay, thank you for your patience. Okay, right. Okay, so the loop network we talked about with the switches and the coils, that's going to be your base pinball fundamentals, okay? On top of that, we have our expansion bus. So this is like the experiential stuff, okay? This is the non-timing critical things like lighting, servo motor control, stepper motor control, DC motor control, like all that kind of stuff. So this board, for example, this is 256 RGB LEDs. So you can go through and run different lines off of this, but basically like laying out where all the playfield lighting, the GI lighting, like however you want to arrange the lighting, we tried to make that process like really easy to do. So so that's the expansion bus here. Like I said, there's other versions. One of them that we have comes with 4 servo motor controls and 128 RGB LEDs. Another has like 2 stepper motors. So when you get into things like that, like we talk about the fun things, like we talk about the Stairway to Heaven, I think that was a stepper-based motor. Anybody else confirm that? Some sort of motor device that would be controlled by things like the Mission Pinball framework. But we really wanted to make sure that like we had some standard conventions for being able to integrate like more interesting features. So you're not getting a bunch of like random like plug-in boards, USB boards, and things like that. Our goal with the expansion boards was to say like, this board, we may change the components on it over the years, but this board's always going to act the same. So that was a big need for our commercial customers that are building commercial boards, that like the idea of like if this board was in their game, like I think there's 2 of these boards in the Barrels of Fun like Dune game that's out there. So if 10 years from now you're in there tinkering with your game and you jam a screwdriver through something and wreck your board, like we've got a 50-year plan to say like a board like this that you could buy then, plug it into the system, will just run. And so that approach lets us make sure that like your project that you're doing, you're putting your heart and soul into your homebrew game, that like the hardware, you're not at I guess you're not limited by the long-term planning of like some random servo and stepper motor controls and stuff like that. So it really kind of brings the fun part into the game. And what else do we have here? Like we have some, these are the trough PCBs, the opto boards that plug into those. And this is another version of like one of our loop network like I/O boards. This is the 0804. It's got 8 switches and 4 more drivers when you just need a little bit more. But also one of the big things that you'll find like with the fast system is, and you'll see this in our wiring guide and stuff, is we've adopted a lot of conventions to try and make it very consistent. So you'll see, and I'm going to be doing a wiring walkthrough and stuff like that after this. That's focused on the idea of like, we have very specific wire colors that we use for everything. So if you follow our guidance and you're using like, a 12-volt line is going to be yellow, a 48-volt line is going to be blue, 5-volt line would be, red. All of these things are intended to say like, if you follow that guidance and you send us a picture and you're like, hey, I think I did everything right. I'm sure I did everything right. You send me a picture, I'm like, well, if you did it right, that 12-volt wire is going to blow something up over there. So swap those things around and you're off to the races. And that was really important when we're supporting homebrew people, is like the last thing I'd want to have happen is you're following some forum thread somewhere and you follow a guidance and you match colors there, but they're not the same here. Anything that you ever find in any of the documentation on our FAST website, all those colors are always consistent. And that seems like, okay, that's fine, but man, it makes a big difference. And so these are the things that we obsess over. Not saying that you guys couldn't figure out wiring, but like, why have to worry about confusing wiring if we can like skip those steps? Troubleshooting 6 different black wires that are all the same and 2 red and a reddish wire, like you're working on homebrew pinball whenever you can find the time for it. And the idea of like forgetting what you were doing at 11:30 last night, you don't want to get messed up on that. So we're trying to find all the ways that minimize those opportunities to make mistakes. So,
yeah, and I think to tack on to that, the computer system that's set up for that, I've set up the programming to match the fast wiring diagram. So the inputs, outputs that they have listed on that diagram, the switch locations, everything matches so that once you follow that guide and wire it up, hook it up to the computer, to the neuron, it's ready to go for the lower third.
And I think I think this kit is awesome. This is the biggest leap forward for you right here. You're not having to figure out how to get the OS installed, the serial drivers installed, like anything like that. This is like turnkey. That part, I feel like this is the most valuable part of the kit right here. It's like you have something that if you hook everything else up the way we tell you to do it, and then run some code against it. I have 3 kids, and like when I had software that I wrote and hardware I helped design, like control something and make it move for the first time, it was it was like on par with the birth of a child. Like it was a yes, this is awesome moment. And that's the part, like all these kits are designed to get you to that part as quickly as possible. The part where you might reach out to your spouse or significant other and be like, look what I did here, this is incredible. Because again, it's not just you tinkering, it's you're bringing something to life. And that's one of the joys about creating pinballs, it's designed to be shared. So these projects that we get passionate about are really designed to say, I've got this fun idea and I want people to come over and experience it. Like a project like Pinball is like based on the idea of a shared experience and the chance to like learn new things along the way and stuff. So where do we go now?
I think maybe community.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that.
So once you have your system up in whatever form that is, once you have your system up in whatever form that is, whether it's flipping, not flipping, there is a huge community in a couple different areas that allows you to reach out to people that are doing the same thing that you're doing and ask questions. Hey, I got this switch that's not registering. You know, I've done this, and this, but it's not working. What do I do?
Or get the little accountability. You know, I mean, I think that we all aspire to do as much as we can, but we've got lives, families, jobs, all that kind of stuff. So if you say like, okay, I'm getting set up. I'm going to spend this weekend, I'm going to get my flippers flipping, you know. The last thing you want to do is show up Monday and have people go like, hey, so how'd it go this weekend? And you have to admit you watched crap TV all weekend. Like that accountability is really good, you know, and I think that that's one of the things I love about these shows too. Is like, I mean, there's people bringing their projects here to the shows that the games have been, you know, finished for years, and they're just bringing them back out to hang out. Others, they just barely got here by the skin, and they're just bringing them back out to hang out. Others, they just barely got here by the skin of their teeth, and it's just barely flipping. Others are still working on it. We're hanging out in the booth, building games like in real time. And I think that that's one of the things that the community is so incredible for. Is like, I mean, I've learned more about electronics and engineering and friends making. I mean, I've made more friends since I started this pinball journey, meaningful friends, than the whole rest of my life added up again. And I've got a lot of friends, but like I've made even more meaningful friends. We travel all over the world to go to different events and stuff like that. And I love the idea of like somebody from Europe who's saying, I'm visiting the West Coast and I want to come and see you guys. We'll reach out and say, hey, so-and-so's in town this week, who's coming out? And 4 or 5 people all meet up just to have some time together, and you know, everybody wants to buy drinks for the people that worked through some problem they had. So it's a really great way to get connected with people, for sure. All right, so is that us? All right, so let's roll. Let's see, we're talking community, talking about helping people. Okay, one of the things I do want to add, and I think this is for all of us to know here, is sometimes you don't know what the question is you're even asking. You know, what is this? What am I even trying to do here? And I think one of the things I always try to do is help people like ask better questions and stuff. And so I think that like, what you don't want to do is get too frustrated where you feel like I can't even get help. I think that one thing you should really try to do, and this is like a method for, you know, a lot of programmers will use this. It was explained to me the other night, it's like they talk rubber ducking or talking to the duck or something like that. And the idea is like, if you can explain the problem that you're having to someone else, half the time you're going to solve the problem just by like clearly thinking of what it is I've done and what I'm trying to do. So one of the things I really love seeing is like people who are getting more comfortable with like, okay, here's the log file of the issue that was generated with an issue that I was having. This is what I was trying to do. What I did here in my code configuration, I thought would achieve that. What am I missing? If you act like the person that's got the answer to your problems has 5 minutes to help you, like it's going to help you like box up that question in a much better way. And I think that's one of the things that from a community standpoint, we all have different backgrounds and experiences. Some of it's woodworking, some of it's electronics, some of it's in animation and art. I mean, you never know who's going to be able to like help you out. But if you really take the time to like think about your problem and present it in a way that you could actually be helped with, not only are you going to solve the problem yourself a lot of the times, but you're going to create engagement. And I think that like a lot of people are afraid of asking dumb questions. There's no dumb question. The dumb question is the one that's not asked. And I think that a lot of times too, you might ask a question that somebody else was afraid to ask, and it's going to build some confidence in them to say like, you know what, like that guy asked a dumb question. But my question is pretty much the same. I'm going to ask that question too. And I definitely love seeing the new people helping the newer people that just showed up, because they just solved that seemingly simple problem and they're eager to jump in and help with something they know they can answer the questions too. So that community side of things is really incredible. So
yeah. I think maybe questions?
Let's do some questions. Does anybody have any questions? Do you want to even come up and look at some of the stuff in real time? Like wander in? Somebody keeps poking there. Yeah, what do you got? Should I go? Then you can go, okay. Okay, origin stories. Yeah, so how we got into doing what we're doing here. So I started what I'm doing here working with Dave Beecher here. This is the actual engineer that makes all this stuff here that I rave about all the time. My contribution is like, I think it should be this size and this color. Yeah, a little bit more than that, but I'd go back to the maker movement. Okay, so 3D printers, maker spaces, CNC machines, all that stuff. Like as a visual thinker, the idea of I see all these machines that could create things that I'm imagining. So the chance for Dave and I to work together to create a hardware platform, like my background was in software, creating software platforms and things like that in the real estate space, like super fun. But applying that platform approach to electronics, this was really cool. So what was very natural for me was the idea of I want to create a hardware platform that people can make great things with. I thought I wanted to create a pinball machine. I've made 0 full pinball machines myself, but I've been able to help a lot of great projects get made, and that I find incredibly satisfying and stuff. So a lot of what attracted me to pinball was the chance to learn new things. I'd done no electronics work and stuff like that before this. Dave is one of those rare engineers that wants you to know everything that he knows. Because if you can offload some of that work, he can work on the cooler problems at the same time, like coming up with an audio system for us to use all this stuff, So yeah, that's kind of how I got into this. But Ernie, why don't you throw it, man?
Yeah, I got into virtual pinball first. Built a virtual pinball machine, loved it, and then I was went to some arcade bars, different things with pinball machines, and I was like, virtual pinball is not anything near real pinball. It's awesome. No offense, Emil. It's awesome, and it's getting even better and better. But the physical ball moving and the way it feels and the shots that you're hitting, there was no comparison for me. So I was like, I want to own a machine. So I bought a 19, or I can't remember what year, but a Stern Dracula in pieces, put it together, got it all working, and I was like, man, I really want my own machine because I wanted a League of Legends machine, and I don't know how many people here know what League of Legends is, but I wanted that machine, and I knew that no manufacturer was going to make it, so I started researching what it took to make it. There was not an easy how-to at that point of, this is the power supply that you need. The first power supply that I bought for 48 volt, the flippers would quit working for 20 seconds because the power supply was resetting itself in the middle of a game, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? It was because I had the wrong power supply. So there was a lot of different moments like that where I was like, man, it would be really cool if there was something I could just purchase all together, ready to go. The coding, I had already done some coding before professionally, so that part wasn't as hard. But having something that was already set up was, for me, would have been a winner. So it was more, I seen a need for myself, and I was like, I'm sure other people would like something like that. That they could quickly get into it and have everything they need to start out without having to go do all the research and make sure this is right. So that's kind of how this got started.
Yeah, and I guess we should talk a little bit about some of these pitfall things that you don't realize you need to know. I mean, you talk about the power supply thing. 48 volt power supply is not the same across the board. Some of these are so smart; they're trying to protect you from dangerous things like coils firing and those big spikes in current draw. That's where these filter boards will help out. But some of these suppliers are thinking a pinball machine's a war zone. This is terrifying. Shut down. This is dangerous. So again, there's some of them that we've tested different ones over the years. There's some you start flipping flippers and the fans are going full speed the whole time. And again, that's not the right machine for the right environment.
Yeah, I think another thing with that, to go along with that, is they sell copper-clad aluminum wire, which works, and it'll work in your machine until the solder breaks because it just does not hold up over time. So you want OFC copper wire in your machine so that you don't have to worry about something. That's something I learned because I use copper-clad aluminum, and it started breaking at shows. So that's kind of some of those things that, you know, the need was there.
You can hear us over this, right? Still? Okay. One of my favorite ones, and this didn't happen to me. Well, no, it did happen to me. Again, I was doing just the lower third of something I was testing, but I saw it happen to somebody else where you buy some ball guides from one era of games, you buy some slingshot mechs, and you use a template from another era, right? They're all the same. So you get them all screwed in, bolted down, realize that the ball won't even roll down the in lane because this piece is too wide for the other footprint that you chose. So those are those things where, like, now your lower playfield's butchered now because you got to move everything over, you know, a quarter inch or something like that. So seemingly little simple things, even just like what footprint and what like lower third layout should you use and what corresponding, like in this case, ball guides that line up with that. I mean, that's the stuff you don't think about. You figure it's pinball, it should all fit, right? I could screw it in, but again, like sometimes just using the stuff you have sitting around might not get you to the end result you want. Free stuff, like anything that's got a coil on it that somebody gives you for free, pretend like the coil doesn't work, because people don't give away good working coils. They'll give you ones that I think might work. I've seen people waste whole weekends going, I can't get this thing to flip. And in the end, the coil was bad. They bought a brand new coil, it was perfect.
I did that.
Yeah,
It's
very
first
common.
game.
That's one of the areas I'm like, just like, pinball's expensive. You're gonna spend a lot of money making your dream project. Don't skimp on the fundamental backbone items like good responsive coils and stuff like that. That's another, like, that one sucks. Man.
Any more questions?
Yeah. Actually, will you come and speak into the microphone? We know each other.
So if somebody has all of this, what's the average amount of time to go from all these pieces to at least, maybe you can forget the software stuff, which is having everything wired up and assembled to have your lower third, your flippers, and your lower third slings just connected?
Yeah. Realistically, if you followed the fast guide and spend a night, you could do it in 4 or 5 hours and have it flipping.
And I think that's one of those big things too, is like this kit with that lower third set up there, now you're not drilling and measuring all that stuff. It's like, I've described it before as if you can assemble like IKEA furniture and a high-end stereo system, like that's kind of the threshold of skills that are needed to get, you know, your lower third like flipping here. You know, and again, like timing wise, like I think that if there's anything that I've heard slows that down a little more is realizing that there's a tool you don't have. You know, oh, I'm trying to crimp, you know, some wires and stuff like that. Like, you know, with these kits that we ship, it includes like labeled by the board name, which crimps and wires and connectors mate with everything else that's on there. You know, so again, if you don't have the right crimper to crimp that, you know, Amazon will deliver it the next day, so you lose a day. You know, but I think that that's one of those other hurdles, is like what tools do you actually need? But again, it's not that much. You know, a good set of cutters, some good crimpers, some wire strippers, and things like that. But really, like, I mean, he's right. Like, I mean, we've wired up lower third playfields on Twitch streams before in our arcade that we used to have in Gig Harbor, while there's karaoke going across the hall and the drunks are wandering in going, is this real pinball?
So we wired a playfield for Adventure Time at Southern Fried last year on a Saturday? I think it was Sunday.
It's all a blur to me.
And it was like 2-3 hours, and we had the lower third wired up and flipping.
And I think we could have done it faster. We were sharing the same crimpers back and forth, you know, and his were a little different than the ones I was used to, so my muscle memory was all messed up. And plus, people are wandering up. You know, we start conversations about what it is that we're working on and stuff like that. But that was pretty fun.
Yeah,
that was cool.
To go beyond that answer, there's people that have built games in 2 weeks, full games, and then there's some people that have taken, you know, 6 or 7 years.
Right.
You know, I would say there's no wrong way to do it.
Those
there's some
boxes
people
were
that have been
driving me
building a
crazy.
game. I don't know how long he's been doing it, but it's still not done.
Yeah.
So.
But I think that's the thing is, like, again, the goal is like just to get you moving. You know, and again, like, I think the best part about all of this stuff that we're talking about here with these kits is demystifying it. You walk up to a commercial game and open that up, and it's massive. There's so much in there. But what we've tried to do with the electronics, what the Mission Pinball Framework, for example, does with the software, and what Ernie's Kits does to get you rolling, this is all it is. I mean, it's really not that much.
Loot crate.
Sorry, was that?
I said loot crate.
Oh, the loot crate stuff. Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah. So, Emoto reminded me. Marco Specialties carries a item called the Loot Crate. Some people may have seen it. It is a box of
Did you
ramps.
Get one? Oh, cool.
That includes wire forms for the ramps, plastic ramps, some metal ramps, some lane guides, a bunch of lane guides. It comes with a nice big orbit guide. All hand-picked pretty much by me. We had a bunch of stock that we went through and found ramps that could be cut in different spots to make different layouts. The wire forms can be cut in different spots to work with those different ramps. And I think we have 5 on the website right now or so. And normally they've been selling out within a day anytime we put them up there. But it is a huge, huge package of items that are great for making a game.
Well, also too, like, I mean, those ramp samples, I mean, don't be afraid to like bandsaw some of those into weird shapes and glue them together, because again, like, you're just trying to make the ball go where you want. So in that phase of like mocking things up, sometimes like what I've seen done is people will take the entrance of a ramp and then cardboard the rest out of it to make it fit. So once you scoop up onto it, you're basically just guiding the ball around. So, you know, that physical creativeness, I mean, you use the foam core kind of stuff, like you use cardboard, you use fiberboard paper stuff, things like that. But like, there's a few things that like the Loot Crate stuff with those ramp entrances. That's some of the most useful stuff for sure.
Yeah, and I picked, I think there's a couple left entrance ramps, there's a couple right entrance ramps, there's a center entrance ramp. So I tried to make it to where there was multiple different things that people could use. And if multiple people buy that Loot Crate, not everybody's game is going to be exactly the same, because there's ways to make it different.
Do we have any more questions about the kit and getting things started and getting rolling? Sweet. So we're going to be hanging out here for the next couple hours here. So we're going to kind of take a breath. I'm going to get some water, and then we're going to shift over into like kind of what it looks like to start wiring some of this stuff up. You know, the idea of like, what it looks like to, strip some wire, crimp some wire. I mean, just the things like, I've learned a lot of things just by seeing what somebody does for doing things. Like the idea of crimping crimps, you're gonna mess up so many of them. But the idea of like, let me see how you take that crimp, put it in your crimpers and feed the wire into it. I mean, it seems trivial, but that's how I've learned to be a better crimper. Is like, I want to see somebody do it in a way that was actually successful at the other side. So I'd say after maybe a 10-minute break or so, we're going to shift over and kind of do some of that in real time and feel comfortable to come up and wander around and look at this stuff together, because I think that's part of what we're trying to synthesize here in this like theater space. Is like, let's pretend like we're in a workshop together and we're tinkering, and this is time. It's time spent. It's time asking questions and witnessing the stuff come together. So.
Yeah, and I'd like to say I will be somewhere right around this area. If you have questions about the kit or just building a machine, come find me and we'll talk through all of it.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. Sorry, I had my mic on. I was like, ooh, I need to tell them. By the way, we made some more Loot Crates. They're out there. Like Ernie said, they go fast, so I want to make sure the people can get them. Y'all can get them. I'm live streaming, Dave. Yeah, they got better at their mic etiquette, a little bit better. You got to eat the mic, by the way. Always eat the mic. They are resetting to do some wiring, hands-on how to wire your games up starting from scratch. So we should be getting to that pretty soon. Test the soldering iron with your tongue-a-la-lung. Oh man, that's like some Saw movie type stuff. Oh, I just looked at the username. Checks out. So for those just joining us, we are at the Northwest Pinball and Arcade Show in Tacoma, Washington. They've got over 500 pinball machines here this year. It's a super record. lots of amazing people. This Pacific Northwest community is hands down so super friendly, and we love the show. This was one of Mark Mandeltort's favorite shows to go to, and he was always adamant that we came up here, up into Washington, because we're down in South Carolina, so it's a nice big all the way across the other side of the country, to be here and to celebrate pinball with everyone out here too. So super stoked for it. We did a seminar earlier this morning on pinball restoration. I led that with Jeff Young, who's fairly new into pinball but learning very quickly, and it was all about his restoration project on Tales of the Arabian Nights. That was streamed on Geek Gamer TV, and they are also streaming right now, so if you're like, alrighty Moto, this is boring, just pop over to Twitch, Geek Gamer TV. I think right now they're talking about Dune, Butch Peel and David Van Ness going over that game. Dune, there's two of them here, and they have such long lines. Everyone's just waiting to play. I haven't even played it yet. So, lots going on at the show. It's super rad. Those seminars from Geek Gamer TV will soon be uploaded onto YouTube. So if you can't watch it now, you can watch it later. As well as these PINDEVCON, homebrew, custom games, how-to seminars that we are running with Fast Pinball will be on our Marco Pinball YouTube channel forever and ever and ever. So that's the spiel. We're gonna cut over to see what they're doing on over here. I would love to fix the color of my webcam so I match. They're doing things. So for they're doing things. So for those of you in 2 weeks, 20th through the 22nd, we will be at Southern Fried Gaming Expo in Atlanta, Georgia, and we will have a homebrew PinDevCon set up over there too. If you have a game you're working on and you are in the Southeast, please bring your game. You can set it up in our booth. We'll have a nice big display. Just reach out to us. You can contact us at marcotv@marcopinball.com, or hit up Ernie or Aaron through our Discord channels. And yeah, we'd love to see you there. If you haven't started your journey in homebrew yet, then still come out to the show, because you can come by and talk to all the other creators, and it really is such a great facet of the pinball community, and everyone is super cool and super helpful. There's no like competition on like, I'm not going to share how I build my game because then your game will be better than mine. There's none of that. Everyone wants to help each other create, and it's just very inspiring to document this side of the pinball community. I didn't say be a part of, because I have not made my own homebrew game yet, but it's coming. I have a few re-themes in mind first before I go full on Whitewood, but I do appreciate everything they're doing, and it reminds me of the indie film community where we would be making these low budget movies and stuff and helping each other all in the same way. It's just, these are the little movies, pocket movies, custom pinball machines. So I am going to, and please say you are not shooting this in 60 frames. Oh yeah, Christopher. No, it's all 24p cinematic. This isn't sports, so we're not going to 60 or 120 frames per second. Yeah, Christopher's method is to build a game, you must find it out of a dumpster. That is the one qualification he has for his games. All right, I'm gonna come back over and we'll start very soon. You're not gonna be able to hear them really, but maybe I'll turn on some light music. If the music is still playing when we start, please yell at me in the chat. Hey. All right. Cool. We got a handheld mic for the questions now. All right, all right, all right. We are almost ready to go. Just did a quick little transition. Aaron's getting his wire workings all set up to teach us how to wire some games up. Both very practical for not only making your custom game, but just in general pinball repair, you know, how to rewire connectors. He has some tips on how he does crimping and how to keep organized, all that good stuff. I'm a bit out of breath because I just went from the loading dock to here in a quickness. But we're having a great time here at Northwest. And after this, we'll be resetting one more time. We have another seminar today that is right here. Mission Pinball Frameworks with Anthony Van Winkle. Anthony has 3 games here. He has his Swords of Fury Recode, Swords of Vengeance, his custom homebrew Mass Effect 2, and his newest custom project, BMO from Adventure Time. And it's this little tiny, small, super adorable pinball cabinet. It's like this big around and like maybe a couple feet off the ground, and it's in that BMO backpack looking color and shape. Super cute game, so we'll see how that goes. Erica chimes in, shooting at 24p. Yeah. What I was getting at was in between the transition, we will then walk over to the homebrew and custom game section and show you each and every one of the 12 or 13, I think it's 13 pinball machines we have. So we're getting that all set up too. Alrighty, y'all. I'm gonna cut over here. Hey, look, there's me. There's Ernie. Good job, Ernie. We're proud of you. We're live streaming. Are you gonna help Aaron with the wiring?
Him and Eli and Dave.
Oh, okay, cool. Alright, I'm going to mute my mic to get ready for theirs. Stand by, y'all. Okay. Welcome, everybody. We are getting set up. We have Aaron Davis up here in the front. He's going to show us how to wire some things up. He's giggling. I don't know why he's giggling. He's so excited. Crimping and stuff. The crimping stuffs. And we got lots of Molex connectors here and some little Trifurcon crimps. Trifuricons, he says. Enunciate all the syllables, he says. So this is super handy for making your own game, but also just in general, pinball repair. Okay, maybe we're not ready yet. We lost Aaron. Hope everyone's doing good. Having a nice, relaxing Saturday. We do have our Father's Day campaign going on, so if you need pinball parts and want to save on shipping for orders over $99, free domestic shipping with code PIN-DAD25, or if you're international, $10 off your $99 order, $10 off shipping, and that's the same code, PIN-DAD25. You can find more details on our website. Oh, he's coming. Let's do it. I'm a stolen. Happy to be here. Danzig's ready. That's right. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. Sure. Hey.
So am I doing headset?
Let's make a movie. Oh, yeah. Do you want to try to put him on the headset? I don't know how you would do it without it. So eat it. Put it in your mouth. He's gonna put it in his mouth. Put it in his mouth. No? He didn't like that song. Sorry. He's doing his TED Talk. His TED Talk on how to wire pinball. It's not a sound yet.
Enhanced? Can we enhance?
Oh yeah. That's
Can we
great.
add masculine and attention getting and impressive? Can we get a little more impressive?
This one is common for feeding back, so
Okay.
it's almost has it right in your mouth.
All right, what about that? That seems good. All right. And can I stand up or should I sit down? Usually I'm pacing around, driving everybody crazy on my phone as I come in and out of connectivity. So, yeah. So what's that? Oh, totally. Like they're just flying everywhere. When I'm cutting pins off the board, I was finding that everyone I cut, they would fly in the same general direction. And I was rearranging shelves, and I get to this top shelf, and I'm, what's rattling in this box? It was full of probably 200.156 pins that had just gone bing and flew through the air. So. All right. You just tell me when we should start. Should we just go? All right. Thank you guys for hanging out. We're going to be talking about crimping wire. It's going to be awesome. My name is Aaron Davis from Fast Pinball. We're at PINDEVCON at the Northwest Pinball Show, put on by Fast, Marcos. We're having a good time here. So what I wanted to show at this talk is we just finished up, Ernie and I just walked through what it was going to be like getting the homebrew kits, getting a starter play field, and then getting a fast kit that goes with it and stuff. And so one of the things we've really tried to do with these kits was make it easier for you to get to the fun part of making pinball. And for a lot of people, the not fun part is cutting and crimping and making cables and stuff like that. And so for whatever reason, I seem to enjoy it. And I thought it would be kind of fun just to show some of the little stuff that like I've done that makes it a little bit more consistent and I guess more achievable. So I'm going to just show real quickly the tools that I have up here. So this is my crimper. So if you go to our fastpinball.com/wiring, we have all of these topics that I'm going to glaze through real quick. Talks about all the different gauges of wire, talks about the different colors of wire that we use, and then there's references to a lot of the different tools that we like to use, links to Amazon, stuff like that to pick them up. But what you're going to need in the fast system is we use primarily 2 gauges of wire. It's 22 gauge wire and 18 gauge wire, and we use 2 different styles of crimps. A trifuricon for the this is, you're not even gonna see this, that I'm holding in my hand. This Trifuricon connector for the 0.156 connectors and the 18 gauge wire, and then these tiny, I don't even know what the part number is on these smaller 0.1 pins as well. 0.1, yeah, 0.100, whatever that is. God, I know what I'm talking about. It just doesn't sound that way right now. So one of the big things that I try to do with the wiring is be consistent, you know. And so one of the things that's cool too about how the FAST system is set up is like we've made all our connectors the same, all the wiring colors and things like that we use are all the same. So once you get comfortable with actually like crimping and making wire or making cables, the hardest part is more a matter of like where are you navigating, where are you placing all the wire and stuff like that. So inevitably you're going to crimp something wrong, you're going to mess something up, you're going to need to change something, and I guess that's some of the stuff I just want to kind of show here and stuff. So first of all, like I said, I started with the tools. So this is I've got a crimper here that I use. It's got a few different tooth sizes. There's one that I use primarily for the 0.156, another that I use for the 0.100, and then some others for like some JST connections and stuff like that, which I hate. They're super small, they're a pain. They're really good for robots to put together, but they're not so good for users to put together on their own. So that's why we don't use them. So what I want to show right now is just, I guess, first of all, like the process of crimping cables. I have a bunch of sample cables. Out in the booth, I thought it would be fun to bring the new auto wire crimping machine or wire stripping machine that we got, just because we think it's fun and it just showed up and it's a new toy and I wanted to play with it. But what we did out there too is we're using some of the wire colors that we don't commonly use. Like we actually don't have a 18 gauge brown wire in our standard set, so that's why I'm using these here. I didn't want to use up all the good wires, so that's what these are. So so really, like first off, I just want to show like, and I guess we're going to kind of zoom in on some of these things here. So crimper, okay? A lot of the crimps are designed to be used by machines and stuff like that. So they're going to precisely feed them in, they're going to crimp them the way that you want. What's a little bit difficult sometimes is with your hands, like using a crimping tool and doing it manually. So one of the things I wanted to show, and again, if any of you guys want to come up and stand around and crowd just beyond the camera here, like feel free to come up. Like it's super exciting content. So one of the things that I'll end up doing, let's see what we got here. So taking the single pin, the 0.156 Trifuricon pin, is the crimp that I like to use is right here. So you'll see that there's two steps of the teeth. One is to press the outer set of the crimp into the wire casing, and the other section is to push the connector into the actual wire itself. So you can see how that lines up there. If you look from the side, like it's flush. So if I take that and I give it, they have some clicks to them, so I give it a couple clicks, enough to where now it's held, okay? So now that it's held here, I've pre-stripped this cable. We'll talk about stripping cable here in a second, but like you can see here, this is cut to this is about a 4mm strip. This I find is a pretty good fit for a lot of the stuff that we do. So from here, again, like in the teeth here, it's crimping two different sections. So what I'm doing is I'm feeding the wire in here, and I'm moving it beyond the first rung and moving the exposed wire into the I've never just said any of this out loud before, into the section that's closer to the front. God. So you'll start to feel a little muscle memory on this stuff. So again, showing how the crimp gets in there and feeding the wire in here, I can see that it passed far enough past that outside crimp. And again, these ratcheting pieces, the biting section of it, I should learn what that's called. The what? Strain relief. Okay, love it. So the outer section that binds into the outer housing is the strain relief, okay? That means that the section bound into the wire itself is not getting pulled and pressed, making it more potentially brittle. So again, I'm gonna take this, I'm feeding it in here, snap a couple times, turn around, crimp it in, and there we go. Like, look at that, that was super fast. And again, this stuff, when you do pinball machines, I mean, even on this board alone, there's gonna be, I think it's 11 of these potentially there. And then there's, let's say 32 minus 4, that's what, 28 separate pins if you populate all the switches on here as well. So you get plenty of opportunity to do this over and over and over and over again. And I think that's something that like, feeling rhythm or momentum and stuff like that, the muscle memory is a big deal. I talked about when Ernie and I were working together at the Southern Fried Gaming Expo, building a pinball machine in real time. The hardest part for feeling rhythm and momentum and stuff like that, that's the muscle. I were working together at real time. The hardest part, they were not the ones that I knew. I can do using his tools, it was not a thing. So absolutely fine, and I felt like I was missing an arm, or maybe missing a thumb at least, you know? So that was no fun. So, okay, next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you crimping these smaller wires. So for this also I need to use some of the smaller wire that I have here. So let's talk about, let me add stripping wire into what we're gonna show here. So you can get a lot of different tools for stripping wire. You can use just a set of like nippers like this that you can just kind of cut into, and not even a fancy tool. So I'll show you what I do with that, okay? Here we go. So I'll get the amount that I want to take cut off, okay, and gently press them into it. And now if I just kind of gently press and rotate around a couple times, now I've got a nice clean edge, and I just kind of, whoops, do that. Just kind of pop that off, and now I've got a nice clean strip there. And so again, like you're not wanting to cut into the metal at all, obviously, because you want to save that. But again, now that same exposed metal, not the anti-straining, no, strain relief section, we have these smaller crimps here. And again, I'm using a different section of the crimper to do that. So again, the idea is the same. It's got two sections, the strain relief and the part that holds the wire. So I'm gonna go down to where I feel like I've got it held well enough. And your crimper's gonna be different. The points where they ratchet, again, you'll do this a lot and figure that out. So to the housings that are gonna connect to these boards and stuff. So because I crimped a black wire and because I don't wanna have any bad content out here, we only use the black wires when we're using the ground section of like anything in our wiring scheme. So one of the ways that we use that is we have a 12-volt system that bounces all over the place through our different boards, daisy chaining through. And so one of those connections will be a 3-pin cable. So let me find a housing for that. So again, 3-pin housing. And then we have the crimp that I just did here with the black one. So I know that like on these boards I have here, this is gonna take 12 volts in and allow me to daisy chain out another 12-volt connection and stuff. So if I forget which cable goes on what side, I can actually look at the key on here and see that I've got positive, the key, and the negative. So if I line that up, I know that like Aaron should put the negative side onto here. So these go in a lot easier. They're nice and slim, and let's look for that satisfying snap. So we feed that in here. You jiggle that around till it just clicks. So now it's held, so that's cool. The switch connections that we use, the low current 12 volts we use, again, are using this thinner 22 gauge wire. The examples that I showed here with the bigger connections, these are going into, these would be the driver lines on one of our I/O boards and stuff. So these are what are going out to your coils. So these connections can be a little more challenging to get the housing in, or the connector into the housing. And so I want to show you a trick that I use. As you're pressing this in, the idea that like, if it's not going reasonably well, you're basically gouging it into the side of the plastic and you're just embedding it deeper and deeper and deeper the more that you push. And it's creating a burr, okay, that's like sticking into this. The only way to fix that is like with an X-Acto knife to reach in there and cut that burr out. So if you find yourself kind of like pressing and it seems like it's harder than it should be, you're probably not moving in the right direction. So what I've found is a good way to get that in there is that as I slide this in, okay, I can kind of jiggle it a little bit, and that's going to keep me moving along in a way that's not pressing right into the material. So again, let's see how I do with this stuff. Oh, we're doing all right. There we go. We get the click. So now we're in. We made it. Thank you guys for watching this. That's the most exciting part of this whole talk. Okay, but again, like, yeah, question. Great question. I'm going to show another tool, okay? So these. Oh yeah, the question is, if I messed up on this, if it got partially in there, it didn't go well, what would I do to fix it? So there's a whole series of these different tweezers that you can get for doing like fine board work, hobby work, things like that. These things, maybe one of these or an X-Acto knife or something like that is a great way to do this. Now, based on the different pins that you've got, so let's zoom in on this, okay? So if you look at the way that the crimp works, it's designed, it's got an area that's like spring relief as the pin goes in, okay? So to get that out, we're moving the opposite direction of that. We're basically pushing the housing, or the pin's connector in and out the housing. So let's see if we can do this in real time. Are we zoomed in here? Okay. So I'm using, as I wear out these tweezers for fine board work, they turn into brute force tools. So this is one I've already wrecked the tips on these. So as I stick this in here and I'm pressing down on the top of it, now the burr that holds it in place, that gives us the satisfying click, is now pressed lower than the housing, so I can actually like press down. Come on. Come on. And push that out. So it starts to feed that out the back there. So again, now oftentimes too, we get a side shot of that, it's kind of dented on the top now, you know? So you can bend that back and get it back in. I'm obsessive enough that I'd rather just fix it and replace it, because the last thing I want to do is find a connection that's a little bit weird, or one that pulled out now that I kind of bent the fixture, or the connector itself, the connector pin itself. So let's go ahead and just do another shot of like, we're going to feed this in. We're picking a fresh port. This is one I've not done before. I could let Jack come up here and pick which port so he knows it's not staged. But again, we'll stick this in here. So actually, let's show that burr. You see this burr on top here? That's what, when it gets into the housing far enough to hold, that's what keeps it from pulling out. So that's why you want to make sure the crimp is good, because once that's in there, it's not coming out. Your wire, the crimp to the wire itself is going to be the part that fails. So getting a good rhythm, getting used to that is good. So again, I'm going to just feed this in here. Kind of wiggling that side to side. It's in, snapped in. That one went smoother than before. So again, like, I think that the little tricks, and I'm glad you brought up the mistake side of it, because that's something that, like, it's very easy to just start gouging into this thing and cutting things and stuff like that. But if you're really paying attention to what the connector is that you're using, now you know how to like go backwards from that. You're basically just wanting to get that burr below the plane and then push that out. So that's why I like using these tweezers that have a rounded edge on them, because you can kind of just hook it in and push it through. Now let's go back to this one here. So this is the .100 connector. Now these are a little bit like, they don't work as well as the example I just showed, okay? So I can use the tweezers to do this as well, but basically these have a plastic top on them. So zoomed in there. So these, basically what secures them is the void that's in the connector pin itself, or the connector itself, is fed in with a plastic piece that snaps into it. So what I end up doing here is like, I take one side of this tweezer underneath that and pry that up. Come here. Oh. Okay, so I get underneath that and see I've kind of pulled it up and out of the way. That burr is clearly out of place. And I'm trying to hold that with my finger and then just kind of jiggle this wire out, okay? And again, you can see I'm past the burr now, but it's still stuck, so there you go, got that out there. So this you'll do plenty of times, because if you're following our documentation, it's very specific about which wire goes where. And so you think you're a hot shot and you've just railed through like 15 of these cables and you think you're done for the night, and you look down and you're like, I've made these all backwards. I'm saying from experience that it's very easy to do that, you know. Fortunately, you can look at your cables and sometimes there's the same wires in different places, so you might only need to change a couple of them, but it's gonna happen. So, yeah, so I guess, I've never done this demonstration before. So I guess, are there any questions about any of the stuff about wiring or other principles and things like that before I kind of move on to another section? Okay. The different colors? Okay, maybe we can get a shot of my wire cart over here in the background. So this is my, I picked this up from Uline. This has got all the different cables and stuff on it. So convention-wise, okay, if you see a blue wire in our system, that's 48 volts. And we use, the white wires is typically what I use for the driver lines. And you know, people ask, like, you know, what about striped wire and stuff like that? You know, if you've got access to striped wire and enough variations, like, that's awesome. You know, to get striped wire in white with a different color all the way through, that's a lot more effort. And so one of the things that I've done is I go through the convention I use, again, using white wire for, I know we'll come back to the other colors for a second, but this is an important thing. With the switches and the driver lines, all the driver lines that I use are white in the documentation. I think it might show as like gray because white on a white page doesn't show up. And then our switches are orange. So you see the orange switch lines that go around. Typically in a system that's plugged into one of our node boards that's on the playfield, the wire lengths are usually maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet long max. Usually about 1 foot long. So you're not going super far. You're not tracing this traditionally from old school pinball from the back box, bringing that all the way up to the playfield, figuring out what it is. So what I tend to do, and I got them on my holster here, is I keep Sharpies everywhere. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll hash one side of it with one black line, and on the other side where it goes into the other connector, another black line on that. And then as I put the next cable in, 2 lines on it, 2 lines on the other side. And again, you're thinking like, how do I keep track of all that? You've got a wire this long. I mean, I can follow with my eyes. I don't even need the hashes sometimes. But again, anything that's going to keep you from getting confused or mixed up, this is just something that I use and stuff. But those very long 5-volt lines end up being antennas, just radiating out there and stuff like that. So we found that by generating the 5 volts needed where needed, it actually helped with its approvals and certifications and stuff like that. So, I think that it also turns into one less thing that you need to buy for your homebrew machine. And I think that it also gives us conventions to adhere to, so as we may change the components that are on any of our boards, we still know that we need to output 3 amps of 5 volts. We might find different components to do that or change that, but it gives us these kind of predictable conventions to use. Moving on through the colors, our switch lines end up being orange, and our switch grounds, which are different than the grounds used for the other high voltage stuff, or what we call our toxic grounds. The switch grounds are going to be specific to the switches, so they're actually coming off of our I/O boards, going straight to the switches, and the direct switches come back here too. So all the headers here, if you're following the docs I have, it would be like orange for the 8 inputs on each of these headers and a couple of switch grounds. Those would be purple lines. And again, you can do whatever colors you want, but these are just the conventions that we use. And I promise you, it's easier for us to support you if you're not picking random stuff all over the place, because it takes out that layer of explain to me what this is I'm looking at. We can make certain assumptions there. And what else do we have there? We have, I'm cheating and looking at the cart over here. From time to time, you'll end up with like a gray wire. And so what that'll be is on our LED lines, we have 5 volts data in, going to the LED, and then ground. Sometimes we will have a board where we might, one of the playfields we have out here is an example of a wired up, like feeding a switch line, feeding a switch line and a switch ground, and then 12 volts and ground. Okay, so again, a standard input to make this inductive switch do some cool things. What's hard input to make this inductive switch do some cool things. What's hard about that is daisy chaining all that stuff across a whole bunch of these different connectors was like a huge pain. So Eli whipped up this other fun little board. This board is going to take, coming from our board, from our I/O board, we're going to feed this 4 switch lines and switch grounds, and then 12 volts coming in. And then out of these 4 5-pin headers, is the corresponding 5-pin connector to this side, so I can feed it directly out the 12 volts and ground, and then the switch ground and the switch line and stuff. So you might imagine you would take half of one of these connectors, satellite that to a point near a bunch of these. So maybe in your front, you're going to do them for your in. They're just passing right through, and then they're just passing right through. And then the 12 volt line coming in here again is passing through to those boards. So it's pure, we call these distro boards for that purpose. All of these are direct input. So the switches, so they're going to come in here and they're going to report right back to the node board. So this is truly a satellite distribution. It's going out to each specific board, but you're not having to come back and like loop back around on those specifically. So there's some of them plugged in on the playfield that's out there, and it makes sense. But what's fun too is like things that we tried to do to make the wiring process easier is like, we know that, like I said, we were using 12 volts all over the place. So the idea that I can run from the back of my playfield, bring a 12 volt line into here, and then just carry on from here to the next place that needs it. Just those little changes, because we had some boards that only had one, a little bit of less wire and a less connector. All they've done is swapped it for labor time to then make these harnesses and stuff like that. So it's much easier. What I've heard is it's much easier to get cables produced following the standard and make sure the employees and the line workers know how you connect all that stuff, as opposed to like, here was a harness that somebody made here who was, it was some of their first harnesses and weren't necessarily as good. You can actually have a whole process of producing commercially made produced cables that the people producing them have to QC, test them all, make sure they're all good. Now you can just follow these conventions that we have. So, so yeah, I mean, let's do some more questions. I mean, this is, I've never said these things out loud before. This is something I do all the time. And actually, I do have one other concept. Okay, so let's talk about this. You'll see it on the playfield that's out there. I don't have any of them with me here, but you'll see these tie, I don't know what they're called, cable ties, gap, it's air gap between them. In between there, you can run things like your RJ45 cables that are running around. But again, you'll see on that playfield out there how we attended to that. And again, this is stuff that like, it's probably fine if you have it close together, but like, why not just be sure? Like, keep that stuff spaced out well, because Ernie and I talked about some of those pitfalls, the things you don't realize that are problems. And one of the like, everybody that does the facepalm moment where like, they got their game working, the code is running, this is awesome, so then they go through and tidy things up, okay? They're zip tying things together, now you've bundled all the nasty toxic grounds right up against your digital lines, and now the game isn't working right. Your narrow fit. What I'll do is I'll take what I'll do is I'll take cables and I'll just tie it onto stuff and then route it around things and see what fits. After I've run enough wire around, I can kind of see what is a good natural artery. Because again, like some of these things end up kind of supporting each other. You know, if I figure out all these telephone poles of those cable ties running around the playfield, eventually you see where the routing goes. So that's what gets me to the, 60 or 50% time of wanting to rewire my whole playfield all over again. But Cat 5, Cat 6, like, you're fine for that stuff. We learned that, was it Cat 8 or Cat 24, like some wacky cat I didn't know existed, actually is wired differently. And it's designed for like really fast transmissions, I think it is. And somebody who does some work in film just happened to have some other cables that snapped in and worked, wasted a weekend trying to figure out where their wiring was wrong. And we never even thought to be like, where did you find a cable that plugged into a RJ45 jack that wasn't right? So so there's another gem, like stay with standard like Cat 5, Cat 6E, whatever it is.
To be connected because they're using reference voltages, right? So if you have one board that has a different ground than the other, they can have differences in operating, right?
So if you follow the guidance of how we've set everything up, one of the things is like, as you come to the playfield, you're coming into the cabinet onto the playfield, we have, it's our, I know the numbers, I don't know what playfield interchange board we call it. So imagine you've got your playfield under your rotisserie all wired up and stuff like that, and you've got this one single board in the back that's designed to take power from your power supplies to this, and then the RJ45 cable from your power supplies to this, and then the RJ45 cables coming into that onto the playfield, runs around to the rest, and then goes back off out to the controllers. So keeping in mind reference grounds and how all that stuff should work, our guidance is paying attention to all that. So if you follow the way that we describe how to work, we've thought about where you should tie things together, where you shouldn't, where they that's why like when we talked about the switch grounds, right? So you got your switch and switch, we call it switch return ground. Again, it's still ground, but if you're coming in here and resolving ground right here on this board, you're less likely to get messed up by something else. Ground plane changes or ground reference changes. How would you say that? Like the ground plane bouncing around and things like that. Like, yeah, dude, hop. Yeah, you jump on this one, man.
So yeah, it's like I spent so much time looking at the toxic ground on the pinball machines and how all these grounds work, and it was kind of shocking. Like just at 5 feet that you typically go on wire, let's just say you're 2.5 feet or whatever the run is from the back box down to the playfield, the voltage swing when a flipper goes is about 2 to 3 volts. If you were to share that with any 5-volt device, you can see your range is from 2 volts all the way up to 8 volts. So you're wondering why your LEDs change colors or just get destroyed, all of that. There's a reason right there. So the whole ground management in the system, like with the toxic ground, everything's going all the way back to the filter board. And so that is where ground zero is for everything tying together. So that toxic ground, even though it's moving, it's only affecting the coils and nothing else. So switch ground is kind of a funny one because in a way, our boards do float. Like when there's coils moving around, the boards can float independent with one another. So it was this way. It's like with the switches, if you were to tie a switch ground to a board that it's not connected on, you actually can get some ground loop issues going on where the boards can't float the way they want. So now your switch grounds start to carry current. So anyway, we have all that out there online. There's even a white paper out there kind of showing how the toxic ground affects everything.
Yeah.
But let me give that to you. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I think it's on. Go ahead.
Hello. And then do you guys somehow ground the cabinet itself so someone can't electrocute themselves?
Yeah. So the braid ground,
yeah,
it's a good thing. So on pinball machines, every metal part you can touch that makes it on the outside, your legs, your coin doors, even if there's like bolts going to where the back box swings, all that stuff has to be tied to that ground braid.
So we have a tie point actually like right on the filter board here. And then you'll want to run that but underneath the corners of your power supplies and stuff like that as well. So in the docs, we try to give you all that guidance in there in general. So that's where like we're trying to think of the stuff that you haven't thought about, or I mean you've thought about clearly, but like others who have not thought about yet, and just say these are some core. This is getting you on par with a commercial game, and it's going to make it safe, and it's a chance to kind of learn about how some of that stuff fits together. But let's talk about toxic ground. This is a term that we made up.
Yeah. And it was kind of crazy because we seen it, like we didn't really have great guidance until we got our documentation online. So people were sharing grounds all over the place with all kinds of things: switch ground, LED ground, coil ground. It all got tied together, and it just caused all kinds of havoc. And the support on it was just a nightmare. So I realized I want to find out how bad was it. So there's a free tool out there called LT Spice. So I actually made a simulation, like how much loss is there in the connector based on 18 gauge copper wire and the lengths, how much resistance does this have. So I did all these simulations. It was kind of shocking. I had no idea it was really that bad. And so all of a sudden it just made total sense why all the 5-volt stuff in machines just goes into havoc mode. So anyway, the whole idea with that toxic ground is nothing else should touch it. It's just coils and that's it. So it's toxic. The whole idea is think about it as toxic, connected to nothing. It's just bad. And then when it comes out to, for instance, like all the 5 volts, like Aaron said earlier, when we need 5 volts, we generate it right on the boards, right where it's needed. And we try to give enough current out there. Like most of them right now we have are like 3 amps at 5 volts right at the source. So typically if those are low and right there, it's like there is nothing to interfere with them. It's being generated from 12 volts. It's going to be clean the whole way out. So nowadays, I mean, I haven't seen any LED flicker in our machines.
The LED flicker comes from like poor crimps, and you get your flippers flipping. So things are like jostling around and stuff like that. But like,
so like you mentioned, not enough power, and that's great too because for every length of wire and every crimp you go into, you are going to lose a little bit. And for really long strands, we were seeing drops about 1/2 volt. And at 1/2 volt, guess what color goes out first? Blue, because it has the highest forward voltage of all the LEDs. So if you had a long enough strand, you start noticing, hey, all my blue LEDs aren't really lighting up very much anymore when I use the color blue. Red has got the best, so they would always work green too. But anyway, it is a limit. And then if you need more, we do have boards that have like double that, so 256 per board and what have you. So yeah, there's different combinations for it, but at some point, the 3 amps, we're going to wear that out too. So it's like, okay, it's nice to have that extra clean 3 amps when you get the next, 128 LEDs.
Yeah. You're what? Dude, let's figure that problem out.
We just heard 2,800 LEDs in one game. That is impressive.
Wow. Oh, for like the smart display, the grids. Okay. Okay, that's cool.
So 2,800 LEDs. I'm sure you need
like RGB
your own
DMB.
power supply. RGMD.
Okay, I want to say this too. Like, the fun part for me, like running all this wire around, making it all look pretty and stuff like that, is only because he's thought of all the hard stuff. Like I just follow the guidance on like how we do things. I look at our own documentation to make sure I'm doing it right. But the focus of what I'm trying to do is look at like how we can support this stuff, how we can communicate to people that have never done these things before, who don't think of like these questions that we're getting asked and stuff like that. Like how do we follow this guidance? And like I tell people, I'm like, focus on making your wiring look pretty, and when you plug it in, it'll probably work, you know? And I can say that confidently because Dave's already made sure that like the stuff I'm telling people how to do is safe and is the right way to work, and that's one of the privileges I get to work on with Dave, so I'm glad you were able to jump up here and talk about this stuff.
But just to be fair, Aaron is definitely the better crimper now. Oh my God, like when I went over to his house last time, it's like his crimps are so much better than mine. His muscle memory is, I've been doing this for years, but he definitely wins the crimp.
I would say you get a little bit of that Zen garden kind of thing. You know, it's like I can kind of, it gets into the evening, I kind of turn the brain down a little bit, get to just physical movements and things like that, and it is soothing and stuff like that, for me, at least. It's madness.
It looks like you got another question.
Yeah, go for it.
Since we're on the term of wiring, do you have any boards that have fuses incorporated for protecting the wiring?
Pretty much all of our fuses are on the power filter board, and so we've done all the homework to make sure, like, one thing that Aaron didn't mention, our 0.156 inch connectors, we try to rate everything through our system at 7 amps for that, and all of our 0.1 inch connectors like 5 amp. So we've already looked at what makes sense, and for the number of times you're going to daisy chain and all that, we try to size everything so that that's not an issue. So it's like, you know, it's a lot of discipline on our side too, because that means if I'm carrying through, I have to run really thick traces to carry those 7 amps where they need to. So we essentially watch this all the time, and so it's kind of hard to screw up. Yes, you can put a whole bunch more stuff in it, but then at the time that you're doing that, you're going to blow a fuse on the fuse board because you're not going to put anything over 7 amps on there. And you know, fusing's already, it's a whole other topic that we can't just generically say, oh yeah, you know, do whatever. Because I mean, if you have a 8 amp power supply at your 48 volts, can you put an 8 amp fuse? The answer to that question is no, because it's constant current limit, it's never going to blow that fuse. So fusing is a very difficult part to start with, but just knowing those rules on what I just told you, and knowing that you're going to have a fuse less than that, most likely in your filter board, it's very unlikely you're ever going to burn anything up in the system. But it's a great question, though.
And and I'd add to that too that, like, you know, everything that we've conceived in the system is designed to create pinball as we know it. Like any pinball machine that we know exists could be built with our system. Like pretty reasonably. I can't think of one you couldn't. But if you imagine supporting the most common cases, the more that we can make it, you know, easy to assess, easy to understand, and things like that, that's easier for us to support and teach people how to use it. But you've got some crazy idea that you think goes beyond this, like, we want to hear about that. Like that's a fun problem to solve, you know. And I think that if we don't spend less time needing to be hand-holding through the basic setup, that gives us more time to help people with the really creative, unusual problems to solve, because I think that's where you end up seeing some crazy electrical wizardry or something like that to come out of it. But yeah. More questions? No? Look like you almost have a question? Well, cool. Well, I mean, this is, I guess, kind of the run through. I want to show a few things that we use with crimping and things like that. And like I said, like out on the booth space out there on the rotisserie, we have a populated like pre-production game out there, so you can see how some of that stuff is applied there. Some of the cables are loose and hanging off because we've been borrowing parts off of it, so don't judge me completely on that. But it is a good idea of like what a full play field definitely looks like. So awesome. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, so next up, we're gonna be shifting gears and going software. So Anthony Van Winkle is gonna come up and we're gonna go through the exercise of, I believe the plan is to download MPF as if any of you could from the website, get it up and running and see that actually come to life. And I think that's gonna be a really useful thing to do. So let's give him a little bit of time to get it adjusted and in here, and we'll pick up in a few minutes. Oh, the homebrews in general?
The mixer.
Oh yeah, oh my gosh, I forgot about. Yeah, so we're doing a homebrew mixer at the hotel next door, okay? So it's at 8 o'clock. If you go down to the 3rd floor here, I think it is, and walk over to the hotel next door, you're gonna go up a little bit of a ramp once you go through the doors. It's on the left side there. We're gonna, at probably 7:15 or so, 7:30, put all the homebrews on jacks and roll them out there. So it's gonna be some time where we can all talk about what's going on and what people are working on their games in a way that's not super loud on the floor. So there's there's a bar outside that they're coming in, and like we want you all to come out. We'll pass out some drink tickets for the people that sat through my crimping of wires talk. I feel like you all earned a drink out of that. So so definitely come and check that stuff out. So yeah, and then play all the homebrews and stuff. So cool, done, chores done.
All right, Joe. We will be right back. Anthony is setting up. I gotta help him set up. Do a little cable managing. It's always great to get a nice refresher and tips and tricks on how to crimp wires. Super important, especially in repair. If you have the old IDC cables, then you want to upgrade them to the crimped stuff with the Molex connectors and the Trifuricon crimps, because then you get that really solid electricity going through to your board. And one of the things I've learned is you're like, okay, I grabbed the Ultimate board, I have a new Alltech board, I'm putting into like my Bally or Stern solid state, and you put it in and the game's still not working, and you're like, I just spent a couple $100 on these boards, like what's going on? The next step is you actually need to get those header cables, get the wires out of it, and one by one put them into one of those Molex connectors with a Trifuricon, so you're getting that strong connection. So a lot of times over the years, these are 20, 30, almost 40-year-old games now, just the connections get loose, it's not, there's debris or some sort of oxidation, I don't know. Long story short, just replacing the board alone is not enough. You have to also replace all those connectors too. And I said one by one, because you don't want to just like snip that whole, 18, 24, 25 cable strand and be like, uh-oh, you better be good at reading a schematic. Just go one by one. I cut this one, crimp it, stuff it in. Next, cut this one, crimp it, stuff it in. And just like Aaron said, it's very methodical, very soothing, therapeutic, so to speak, once you kind of get into the groove. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and set up, and we will be with y'all very shortly. Thanks for hanging out with us. And after this, we'll do a quick little walk around of the games that we do have out on the show floor. So stay tuned.
All right. No.
All right, and now actually I'm gonna stop. All right, now we have Anthony Van Winkle here to show us how to use Mission Pinball Framework. It's gonna be great. Okay, y'all, we're still in setup. Anthony has disappeared. In the meantime, let's check out tomorrow's schedule. So for Sunday at 11 a.m., we will have Machines Making Machines. Joe Zenkis is here. His Van Halen flew all the way from Wisconsin, well, drove all the way from Wisconsin to be here at the show in its final home. And so he'll be doing a fun panel with Dave Beecher from Fast, all about machines making machines. So cool. And then after that, we will have the Designing Custom Light Boards with Eli. Super fun. We're still stalling. It'd be great to know and hear what Dave's saying. He looks so into it. Oh, Anthony's walking back. We should be ready to rock and roll pretty soon here. Thanks for hanging out, everyone.
Project Pinball. There are several people that have won
Okay. All right. Well, I assume that you were, but you don't have to. I mean, I'm just going to sit here and talk about coding, I guess.
I'll hang out with you.
All right.
This mic is on because I turned it on. Are we running? Are we live?
I guess so. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
yeah, we're live. All right.
All right, let's do it. So, Anthony Van Winkle, right here. This guy is chief maintainer of MPF. Is that what we call it?
Sure. Yeah. I'm the last surviving maintainer.
So personally, I'm super stoked about this talk because, like, I've talked a lot about, like, I've not built a whole pinball machines. I do all the underlying stuff to try and get to making machines. I thought this would be such a great talk to do to show, like, anybody who's going to sit down and, like, go through the process of getting MPF on their computer, running it, and talking to some hardware. I thought that would be a great talk for people to sit in here and see. Just like for the things we talked about earlier about getting over the hurdles of what it takes to get started making pinball, I think this would be a great topic. So maybe if you want to dive into maybe a little bit about what MPF is all about, and then talk about the process of getting to where you're actually using it.
Sure. Yeah, so the Mission Pinball Framework is an open source pinball programming framework for people who are making their own pinball machines. It's been around for quite a while, and I am the third sort of chief maintainer in its history. And it runs on Python, and it is cross-platform. It's pretty low overhead, so for a one-off homebrew project, it's more than sufficient for what you need. And since it's written in Python, it is scalable. So if there's anything MPF can't do, just write a little bit of code, and you can make it do literally anything. So it's a good first step for people because there's a lot of sort of administrative work in pinball, like how many balls are there, where are they, when you push a button, make a switch fire, when this thing happens, make a light turn on. That's all very admin stuff that you shouldn't have to worry about. So MPF takes care of that and leaves you room to say, these are my modes, these are the shots, these are the shows that are going to play, and these are the scores and different things that are going to accumulate for a player. So it's an abstraction layer so that you don't have to understand serial commands and watchdogs and all that stuff, and you can just come up with the idea of what you want.
Well, I think we should talk about how, like, MPF works with tons of different hardware. And I think that way back at the starting point when the Brian Madden and company who first started the Mission Pinball Framework, one of the things they did was they reached out to me and they're like, hey, we saw your hardware. We think we can make this competing software platform work with your hardware too. And I was like, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. They put a lot of work in their software. I said, so maybe that's not the right route. And then a month goes by and they called up again and they said, we're thinking we want to make a software platform that works with everybody's hardware. And I said, that's the way to go. The last thing I would want to do is tell the world that, like, fast pinball is the coolest hardware to work, and then we get tired of doing it, we just quit, and you've invested all this time into learning the software framework, but then we decide not to do hardware anymore. So I felt like the burden on creating the best hardware interface to write software against should lie with the hardware makers, and then let MPF be that layer that you're creating and designing your game upon. So I think that was the right approach.
Yeah, sure. MPF, it will run on any platform and it will connect to any hardware that has support for it. And the hardware support varies. There is code in there for, of course, fast, multimorphic, OPP, Cobra Pin, Lizzie, some Stern Spike, reverse engineered stuff. And so it's just a matter of how is that hardware manufacturer engaged with MPF? When Fast did the whole new platforming a few years ago, they brought Brian, the original creator of MPF, to redo all of the Fast stuff. The creator of Cobra Pin, he's very active. He's answering questions. He's writing code updates and supporting that platform. So those, I'd say, are the two strongest in MPF, just because they are actively engaged by the hardware manufacturers. But if you have a different platform, or if you want to hook up like an Arduino or some custom platform or anything else, MPF is designed to be completely agnostic to any type of computer, any type of hardware, any type of media engine or game engine. It just counts the balls as best it can and lets you know what's going on.
I think that sounds fantastic.
So I have a series of videos on YouTube going into sort of like setting up MPF, creating a project, your Git repos, your Godot, media engine, and all that stuff. So this here, I'm not going to go into too much detail that. We're going to focus on the hardware, which is something I've completely skipped in those videos. And that's just done through a serial cable. So what we have here is some mysterious little fast pinball machine that doesn't have flipper buttons, so I don't know how far we're going to get. But we'll hook it up and we'll do some stuff.
There you go. So actually where this came from, years ago we were trying to convince people that you could really get your lower third flipping in like, you know, a couple hours and stuff. So we did it as a Twitch stream at the old arcade space we had over in Gig Harbor. And it was Friday night, karaoke night at the Mexican Cantina bar across the hallway. And we streamed this live. We had random drunks wandering in, you know, wanting to know all about pinball. And so this was just a project. Brian Cox originally like cut this playfield for us, stuck a bunch of inserts in it, and then during that call or during that stream, we just wired everything up kind of in real time. And so we talked about some of that stuff earlier today. But I think that now the idea of like trying to bridge some of this gap to talk to the software framework, that's where we're at.
Yeah. So real quick, we'll install MPF, and we'll do that in a new virtual environment using Python 3.12. So make a virtual environment so that way all of your stuff is self-contained and it doesn't blow up your computer, and you know, if everything goes haywire and you need to nuke it and start over again, that's easy to do. So we're going to call this one, here we go. All right, so now we have Python installed, and it's time to install MPF, which is real easy, assuming the internet works. And we're going to use the 0.80 pre-release because it's new and fancy and very exciting.
And you've done a ton of work on it.
One of these days it will not be pre-release. But yeah, MPF 0.80 is a sort of refactor to support the Godot game engine and just a lot more sort of core improvements. And if we look at the things that are installed, there's MPF. All right, so let's make a folder for the demo. And we're going to, I wrote a little script for MPF to sort of set up your core folders and files, and that's just MPF init. All right, so here we have, you know, a basic, I can open up here. Sorry, there's logos on the screen. All right, everything in the middle. All right, thanks, Emoto. So what we set up here is just a basic config file and an attract mode and a base mode, which will get us started. Now I am here with no preparation whatsoever and just kind of winging it, so it'll be a little clunky. But let's open this config file and start putting some stuff. Okay, so we have two modes. That's great. We're going to need some hardware, and I am just going to cheat because I don't have all the hardware stuff memorized. That's how it looks for my current game. But see, the thing with hardware is you set it up once and never again, so you don't sort of retain the memory of how to do it, whereas all the other stuff. Okay, so we're using fast hardware, and we're using the Neuron controller, right?
What?
The Neuron?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, that's the fancy one. And so the fast hardware runs in a network loop. So it starts with the controller, and then it goes out to board, to board, to board, and then back again. Right. So if you need to add more switches or add more lights or something, you can just put another board in that chain, and it all hooks through. So we need to define our loop of boards. And here we have, well, we'll call this one the lower third. We'll just call it the lower board, because it is the lower third. And it's, I assume, a 3208?
Right. It's the only one on here at this
The only one on here. So the model.
Very short loop.
So all this stuff you don't need to worry too much about. It's just, you know, it's all documented on the FAST website for how to get these models, how to set it up, and order is number one. So we're saying that we have a FP3208 board as the first item in our I/O loop.
Right.
And that's the only thing in the I/O loop, so we're done. The end. All right. Okay, so now we're going to need some switches, and we're going to need some coils.
All right. So I guess we should jump over to the terminal screen. We can start touching these things.
Yeah. So the easiest way. Okay. Well, let's just see what switches do we have.
We've got the in lane and out lane on both sides. We've got the slings. We've got flipper. We have no flipper buttons yet. We've got the opto trough. I think that. Oh, and then the shooter lane switch.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So then there's the 3 inductive switches in the center here.
This is enough to start for now. Okay, so we're defining, and this is how MPF works. It's it's like you're not writing code, you're not doing fancy programming, you're just setting up a little text file that says what you want. So we're defining here a set of switches, and these are the ones I remember Aaron saying, and they need numbers. So we tell it where we've wired the switches so it knows what switch is being hit. But of course, all those are wired in the same color, so we can't trace the colors, so we're going to use a very good program, CoolTerm, to connect to the fastboard directly and just see what it says. So we can connect to it, and if we ask, who are you? It is a CPU 2000.
Okay.
All right. And so there's a couple of hacks we need to do to bypass the security on the board and let it sort of be free and wild, because normally the board has some restrictions to make sure it's not, going to fry somebody. Okay, now we are in action, so if Aaron pushes a button, we can see that L slash and minus means that it's activating a switch.
So this is the right out lane.
Right out lane is switch 18 in hex, so in decimal that is?
Dave?
24?
Yeah.
Do I hear 24? Do I hear 25? 25. 20, 18.
So 10, 11,
We'll go with 24? All right. 18 hex is...
we could have been more prepared.
This is late in the day.
I've had multiple callouts for 24.
Okay, and that is the in-lane right?
24.
Right
yeah,
out
18
lane.
hex
Right
is
out.
24.
The next one is 25. So we're saying, so the 3208 board, that 32 means 32 switches. So we count from 1 to 32 on that, well, we count from 0 to 31 on that board. So when MPF, we have to say what board it's on and then what switch number. So we called this board lower, so this number is going to be lower 24. I mean, we could call this, Aaron or whatever, like whatever you want to call it, playfield board. Let's do a playfield board. Playfield board 24 is the outlane right, and then 25 is the inlane.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, what else we got?
Let's do the left in lane.
1C.
1C.
29. 28.
28.
28.
28.
All right, and then so then the out lane is going to be 29.
Left out lane.
1D. Yep.
Yep. Okay.
All right, and then our slingshots.
Say it again.
Slingshots.
Okay, sling.
split.
So the right sling.
1A, which would be
22.
28, 27, 26.
22.
That would be 26.
And the left is
1B, I'm going to guess. Hey. So you can tell we're not real nerds because we don't have the hex table memorized. So
I have hex decoding printed all over the walls of my shop, so I can look up and see it lots of different places. So
I've got the inch fraction to decimals taped up. Okay, so we've got switches and we'll need some coils.
Okay.
We got some slingshot. Oh, I'm forgetting my manners. In MPF, we have a convention where the names of things start with a prefix of what they are. So our switches should all start with S. So we know when we reference that name that we're referencing a switch, because the coils are going to have the same names, and we don't want to confuse ourselves.
I do like convention.
All right, so then C, slingshot left is the coil, and that's going to be number... Oh, so the coils, we can't just sort of fire them.
We can.
Well, do you know the command to fire a coil?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, okay, so now we're going to tell the board to do things. Safety be damned. What's our command?
Yeah, we're hooked up for high voltage,
It's
right?
QL is the command if you want to fire the coil. So it's QL colon, but do not hit enter because we're going to enter a test mode. So QL colon, no enter.
And then press W.
W?
Yep. Yeah, now hit the space bar. So which one are we at there?
I think we forgot the watchdog.
I put the watchdog at 50-50. Does it need to be 50-50-50?
Do 50-50-50. It's probably expired by now. Let's see the...
Okay, so should I push enter
expired.
to exit the QL?
Then
so
just
enter
hit
that
enter,
or
hit
get out of
enter,
that.
enter that other command.
Okay.
So we're just giving the watchdog a huge time. So the commitment here is that like if something goes off the rails, we're like ripping a cord out of it. So, okay. So now doing QL. Okay, so we're at that first one there. So in this command, QL colon, this is the query command. We're going to step through the coils. Let's do a soft, gentle pulse to help us identify what it is. And then unlike the other commands, you'll do W, which will scroll it to the next coil, and Q will go back to the previous coil. Spacebar will refire. So let's figure out like where we're at.
That's it. Okay. So just start.
Okay, so there's one.
So that's number 2.
So spacebar that one again. Okay, so that looks to me like the left main.
Left flipper.
Left flipper main.
Okay.
So identifying the hold coil, in that winding, the pulse that we give it's really small. So you got to kind of put your hand on it to feel the very gentle pulse. But also from a wiring standpoint, I tend to do them sequentially. So you want to do the next one? Hit spacebar. Well, he's moving it with his hand too. Yeah.
So it's probably the hold. Hold the space bar down so you can feel it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the as expected.
So when I was talking about wiring before, how I said like just wire it up in a way that looks pretty, you can use the serial commands as you're stepping through it to see where everything went. You know. Okay. So what do we got next?
This is 4. Nothing showing. Could it be the hold?
Well, Dave, we got a wire ripped off over here, so I wonder if that could be one of them.
Coil number 4.
Okay. Coil number 4 is not alive.
Yeah. So we got that loose wire there. Okay, so where are we at now? I hear something.
I hear something happening.
Yeah. Try it again. I think it's this. Yeah, that's the auto fire that's like wedged underneath itself here. So that's the auto launcher, the one you were just doing.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So which ones are we missing now?
Well, we're still working through, but that was the auto fire. Did that get fixed? All right. So move on to the next one. All right. Let's just see what number 5 is. Keep your fingers out of the way.
All right. That's this one.
What?
That's the trough eject.
Trough eject. Number 6. Right sling. Left sling. All right, and that's it.
So the main will move, and the hold you got to kind of like have your hand on it, because it's the same when we're pulsing it with the test square. We don't know what we're pulsing, so it's a very gentle pulse all the way through. So we found it's just to put your hand on it and you can feel it energize a little bit. Sometimes even holding the flipper in your hand and feel it just almost like work against you a little bit. So yeah.
So this is all new to me. I've never used the QL command before. Normally for testing,
Really?
I'll just
I guess you can write the config.
look at the wire and trace through, because they're labeled on the board. You can see like number 1, number 2, all the way through. But yeah, this will let you do it as well. So I'm assuming that 0 and 1 were the right flipper.
Yeah. So we had one wire that's like broken off here. So yeah. Yeah. So maybe we can leave the right one out of the mix for a little bit to secure that
We'll
wire.
put it in for completeness.
Okay. So like all the serial commands we were looking at, that's what I'll use when I'm physically testing my playfield out. So you don't even need to get MPF installed to be able to make sure that like things are flipping. So you can actually use a text file dropping in the commands that will configure the coils or respond to switches and see it moving. All of this that we're doing, the serial stuff, MPF does behind the scenes for us. So yeah, so I guess in your case of never having used it, the faster way just to write the MPF config makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So now we have a config. It doesn't do anything, but ostensibly we should be able to start MPF and see how we did.
So we should probably set this up, and we probably need a ball to start that, right?
Say what?
We're going to need a ball to start, right? To know that it can eject a ball?
Well, I mean, we're not going to eject a ball because that would be dangerous. All right, so MPF does require a definition of a playfield, so I should add that to the init program, so we don't have to do it manually. Shucks. All right, so we got a few more steps to go through. I forgot that there's a lot of overhead for MPF getting set up. So one of the advantages of MPF as a tool is managing the balls. And it has a lot of logic for keeping track of where balls are and where they should be. So typically you would have a trough, which would feed into a plunger, which would feed into the playfields. Then you may have an upper playfield, a lower playfield. You may have like a separate playfield. And from the playfield, you may be able to go into scoops or diverters or route the balls around. Eventually they will drain somewhere and end up back in the trough. So MPF is responsible for knowing how the balls move around. So for example, one of the previous games I worked on had an upper playfield, a main playfield, and a lock, and a series of diverters that could route balls there. So you can use that with game logic to be like, hey, if the person hits this shot, activate this diverter so they can shoot a ball over here. But it could also be, when the ball is being plunged and you want it to go somewhere, MPF can say, oh, we need a ball to go here. Let me trace through all of the ball devices and all of the diverters and routes to figure out what needs to fire in order to get a ball there. So that's what we're going to do.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So we're going to set up some ball devices. And the first one we'll need is a trough. Oh, we didn't check any of our trough switches. We better add some trough switches. Let's add just one trough switch.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to roll the ball down the trough, and the last switch that happens is going to be the one that we want. 10.
Okay.
Which is actually 16, right?
That is correct.
All right. And then, is there one in the plunger? We'll need a plunger one. 17. Yeah, that's... Which is 7 more than 10, so it should be 25, but we already have a 25.
Anyway, I'll check again. Yeah,
23. I can't math, I guess. All right, so we have the switches now, so we can define a ball device. So we'll define the trough as a ball device where balls can live when they're not on the playfield. And just like we have S for switches and C for coils, BD for ball devices. And it's only going to have one switch right now, which is BD, which is S trough 1. And we're going to tell MPF that this is the trough, that it is the drain, and it is the home. So trough meaning this is where balls are stored. So if you need to get a ball, this is where to look for them. Drain meaning when a ball shows up here, it has fallen off the playfield and do stuff with that. And home meaning when the game starts up, it's okay for a ball to be here. Because you may have something like a ball hold or a ball lock that might, have a ball in it, and then the machine powers down, or whatever reason it boots up. If it's not tagged as home, MPF will be like, hey, there's a ball here, and it shouldn't be there. Let's kick it out. So it's collect all the balls in their homes. Whereas if you have like a captive ball or a pre-filled scoop, you would tag that as home, so that it's okay for a ball to be here when we start. And we're going to have the plunger as its own ball device. And we do that because the concept of a ball device is someplace where a ball can live for a while. And the plunger, it might be that, especially if the game is manually being plunged, we don't know how long it's going to be there. So we don't want to start a playfield ball search when the ball is in the plunger, but we also want to know that it's not in the trough anymore. So having the plunger as a ball device is this is a place, a physical location that we want to know about. And it is a location that comes between the trough and the playfield. So I forget the syntax. Eject targets, that's what it is. All right, so the trough is going to have eject coils, right? Eject coil. C trough eject. And so that means when we want to get a ball out of here, we're going to fire a coil. Some ball devices might have a coil to release or a coil to hold or some other way for getting a ball out. This is an eject coil for the trough eject, and the eject target is BD plunger. So when we request to kick a ball out of the trough, it will fire the coil, and then we'll read the switches to see, did my switch go inactive to say a ball left, and then it'll look at the incoming device to say, is that switch active? Because if we fire a ball out of the trough and the plunger switch never goes active, something went wrong, and we're going to have to assess that. So then the BD plunger will have the eject coil of C. I put it as auto fire because that's what Aaron called it, but I like plunger. Okay, so this is the piece we were missing, is for the playfield. When we define the playfield, default source device is what it is. So this is when a game starts, or there's a ball save, or a multi-ball and add-a balls and something, MPF needs to get some balls on the playfield, and it needs to know where those balls are going to come from. Because you might have ball holds, you might have multiple troughs or other places. So the default source device here is going to be the BD trough. And so, but we know that the trough ejects to the plunger and the plunger ejects to the playfield. And so right now, as set up, it will kick a ball out of the trough, it will land in the plunger lane, it will see the balls in the plunger lane, it will fire the auto fire coil and kick it onto the playfield. And that's, in theory, all there is to it. I'm sure there's something else I'm forgetting, but let's see if that runs.
I think this playfield got dropped on the way over here because apparently this auto launcher is totally wrecked. So I've tried to straighten it here, but yeah, that was a fun discovery right here in the middle of this conversation.
All right. Some minor syntax changes, eject targets. BD plunger. Oh yeah, we need a switch for the plunger. So there are a lot of different ways that a ball device can keep track of how balls are in it. It can have an entrance switch to say if this switch is activated, a ball has come in. It can have positional switches like the trough, so there's an active switch for each one. There can be events, or it can just assume, like the play field, when you kick a ball out of the plunger, it just has a timeout. You can specify the timeout, but if it doesn't come back into the plunger after, say, 4 seconds, we assume it made it to the playfield safely because there's not a specific switch on the playfield. And you might say, well, there are switches on the playfield, so that would work, right? But you think about a multi-ball, you got playfield switches going all over the place. How do you know if the ball came out of the plunger successfully and joined the fray? You know, you'll do a timeout. So if it comes back in the plunger, the eject has failed. Otherwise, you know, assume that it's out there. All right, so now we are in attract mode. So in theory, if we push a switch, we should see it show up. Any switch. Oh, no, I'm still a tech connected to CoolTerm, so I need to disconnect from CoolTerm and actually connect for reals. Okay.
So this is when we have a fun tool for troubleshooting switches and stuff like that, only we forget to remind people, like, okay, after you've done that troubleshooting, disconnect it all and then try MPF again. So that's a very real-time, real scenario that happens.
Now, it doesn't say anything in the logs about connecting to the fast hardware, which it should, but see what happens. Nope, I need to specify. Specify that we're using the fast platform so it knows that's what to connect to. Because we defined the platform of fast, but you can have multiple platforms in your game, which is, you know, if you want to mix and match hardware, or if you have other things like, oh, I can't think of an example now.
Polulu devices,
like Polulu devices, or back in the days of Fade Candy, or other sort of lighting drivers. So you can create multiple platforms that will have their own serial connections, and then device by device, you can specify which platform you want it to, which platform it is, so it knows how to connect to it. Okay, I heard something. All right, so now we see in the logs that slingshot left going active and inactive. No auto fire. For safety's sake,
to break my fingernail.
We have not set up auto fire on these.
Let's see, what we got this one here.
And there's the plunger working.
I mean, we're literally watching text scroll across the screen, and
yes,
this is exciting.
This is the most excitement you can have on a Saturday afternoon.
All right.
All right. So, as far as starting a game goes,
should we tie something to the flippers so we can make the flippers move? Like, should we borrow the slingshots or something?
No, I think we just set up the slingshots as auto fires and then maybe we'll start a game.
Should we use these to flip the flippers? Like to borrow these buttons, maybe? So we don't have cabinet buttons in this equation. We didn't think about that.
All right, so I'm just going to set it up to automatically start a game. So I'm setting up an event here because MPF is driven by events. That's how everything communicates with it. So when the attract mode starts, we're going to start game. I don't know if that'll even work. Let's make one of these. Let's make the right outlane our start button.
Okay.
Outlane right. So one way to work with MPF is with tags. Because there's a lot of built-in behavior and there's a lot of automatic things like starting games, adding credits, you know, that MBF doesn't necessarily know what your start button is or what you're going to call it or things like that. So if we just put the tag of start on the outlane right, that means when this button is pushed, try to start a game.
Should I try?
Yeah, see what happens. We don't have any balls in the machine, so we can't start a game. Thank you, MPF log. It says right there, ball controller denies game start.
So we do, though. So it's opto, so we need to configure that as an opto switch.
So here's a fun thing. Opto switches, which detect the breakage of a line of sight between them, are normally the switch is active. And when there's something between them, switch goes inactive, which is the opposite of a normal switch. So we need to tell MPF that this switch is a normally closed switch, so it inverts the value to understand that it is available.
Time to start?
Let's start. Oh no, I forgot to add a default playfield. And how do I do that? Tags default, there we go. So I really should add this to the net because most games only have one playfield, but if you do have multiple playfields or you have other areas about it, setting up the playfields like this, but there should be one as default, that shouldn't be necessary. But we've defined a default playfield, so when the game starts, it's like, okay, we need to get a ball onto the default playfield. So we've defined all the ball devices, we know what the playfield is, and Aaron's going to get shot in the face with a ball when he pushes that button. No, he's not, because we haven't configured any power for those coils. All right. So you may not have heard the very exciting thing that happened, but that coil did fire. It just didn't fire enough to get a ball out, and here it's going to keep trying.
So yeah, retrying right now.
All right, so we will cancel that, and we will go over to our coils here, and this is the trough eject, and we're going to say the default pulse EMA. So there's two strengths to firing a coil. There's how long does it fire for, and how much oomph does it hit with. So it's usually a balancing act, but for ejecting, let's say maybe 20 ms. Let's find out. Let's see, and is that going to be at full power? And this is what this like game.
That worked well.
And there it is. So in case you didn't see, so yeah, we kicked a ball out of the trough. It popped into the plunger lane. It detected it in the plunger lane and shot it onto the playfield.
Nice.
And that's how you get something firing in MPF. Woo!
What you missed is I was rebuilding this auto launcher here that it got dropped and it was wedged sideways. So I was running out, getting screwdrivers, screws, and we got there just in time. So I didn't realize it was going to auto fire as soon as it landed with that. So yeah.
All right. So yeah, for like more of the MPF side of things, the details on how it works, how to set up modes and a development environment and all that stuff, there is a YouTube series that I've started that covers in that. And then the FAST website and the MPF website have lots of documentation for how to wire up the different FAST boards, the different devices, configure all of your stuff there, and also just reach out right now. Any questions?
YouTube channel.
What is my YouTube channel? Paradigm Tilt. Paradigm Tilt is the name of it. Or just search for MPF GMC. GMC is the Godot Media Controller. That's the new media engine that I wrote for it. You should be able to find it.
Yeah. Question? You're comfortable on the mic.
So that 20 millisecond that you just added, that's the strength, that controlled the strength?
That controls how, so the way the coil works is that there's electricity running into one side of it and then a wire into the fast board. So the fast board will control, it will open up that gate for a certain amount of time, and it can open up that gate a certain amount. So the Pulse MS it opened the gate up for 20 milliseconds at full power. If we want to say, we can also default Pulse Power 0.5. So that'd be 20 milliseconds at half of the power. And so the reason for that is sometimes you need like a really strong kick to move the ball far. So you'll want like a big pulse MS or a short pulse MS, but a lot of power. Other times, like if you're trying to move something like a drop target or a diverter, you don't need a lot of strength to move it, but you do need to keep it moving for time. So there's sort of a balance of, you always want to have your coils at the minimum necessary so you're not causing damage and causing wear. But depending on what it's trying to do and how much force it needs to impart, do you want to impart a lot of force or do you want to impart force over time?
I was gonna say too, like Anthony had said earlier, like some of this stuff, like you configure it and then you forget about it. Like to go through, if you're using the same flipper mechs and the same slingshots and things, you set that thing one time and now you've got a starting point that you're going to use again and again. So that same snippet you use, I mean that's how my brain works. I don't remember the settings if I know that I can go find them where I used them before. So again, once you realize I'm going to use the same auto launch, what do we got, the AE 23800. The variation that you're going to use on that would only vary if you had like a longer play field or you had a ramp that you needed to get up. That's where you might find that the defaults you used on one play field need to be tweaked and adjusted for the geometry and the physics required for the other play field designs you have. So there's all those knobs and dials to twist and turn to get everything just right. But that's also a great way with a lot of the support groups and stuff like that, the different Slack groups and Discords and things. You can be like, hey, my auto launcher is acting weird, and you show what the geometry is of that, and someone goes, oh, my playfield's like that, this is what I used. That's a great way to share information to kind of fast track getting something a little bit different about your latest playfield working.
Yeah. And so like this is, well, I guess the screen is not up, but if we could get this screen up to show my screen here, it'll have, boop, boop. So this is from my Mass Effect game. And you can see I put in some comments keeping track of how I had adjusted the strengths of the different things to be like, oh, well, just like the pulse power, it was at 1, but then on my new playfield is a little faster, so I dropped it to 8, now it's at 75. So that my flippers, they pulse for 54 milliseconds, but only at 3/4 of the power, because that's the balance of having it on long enough to give it a good hit, but not like shoot the ball and cause it flying. Whereas the bumpers, my bumpers, they're at different strengths. Like the bottom bumper is the weakest because it's a triangle configuration, and I want the ball to be able to get out. If the bottom bumper is too strong, it'll stay up there forever. So they're weakening power as they go through. But yeah, so there's a lot of different options, and like here's the drop bank is using some settings where it's got a pulse MS, but then also a timed pulse. So this is a config option where you have an initial pulse that goes up, and then it holds it at a lower strength for a certain amount of time, and that's because it physically takes time to move those drop banks up. You don't want to have the coil going at full power for that long, you're going to break something. So it does 36 milliseconds of 3/4 power, or 36 milliseconds of full power, and then 110 milliseconds at, that'd be 5/8 power to keep sure and make sure it's up long enough for those drops to set and catch before releasing the coil. And this is all just trial and error. Yeah. You're just, because every coil is going to be different. Like, for my most recent game, I ordered 2 flipper kits, one left and one right, and they had different coils on them. And the pulse timing and duration was completely different. I eventually just swapped them out for the same coil for my own sanity. But yeah, so depending on because coils, they all have those numbers on it that some people understand what they mean, but they have different strengths, they have different characteristics, and also as the game is played, or using a coil for a kick out versus a horizontal kickback, it's going to have different properties. So this is all just play around with it, see how it feels, take it to a show, be like, are these flippers, are they feeling a little too fast? Are they feeling a little sluggish? And sort of fine tune it.
I think that show comment is a good thing to know, because you're going to sit there and play your game and get a feel for it, and you know exactly when to hit the flipper and stuff like that, and how that feels, and the ball going where it needs to go. But you watch people playing your game that are just slapping the flippers, not paying attention. That's when you start finding these air balls shooting all over the place and stuff. So you might realize that this pull strength seemed really good shooting these shots, but if it's too high, you're airballing, ricocheting off of things, and you really need to see people playing your game and stuff like that. Even having a buddy come over and play it and things like that. But there's like he's showing here, there's a lot of little things you can adjust and stuff. And I think when Ernie was talking before about his kit, a lot of the kit kind of presupposes a lot of this configuration already. Again, based on assuming you put it all together the way that you were told to. So once you get that initial setup going, now you got to start adjusting things for what the rest of your geometry looks like. That the kit has no idea what your plans are.
So here's one in my newest game where the Pulse MS for the flippers is actually coming from a setting. So MPF keeps track of the settings that are configurable through the service menu, and this is something where, like, if we're on the fields or like in the middle of a show and we say, oh, this flipper's a little weak or a little strong, you don't want to have to like go into MPF, change the code, do a new binary, put it onto the machine, and all that stuff. So you go to the utility menu, and I've programmed increments of 2 from 8 to 24, and it will set that setting for the flipper power level, and then the coil will pulse with that amount of power. So that's something you can also do if you want to fine tune it and play around.
That's a really good example of something that I think a lot of the people taking games to shows should know. I think that, like, again, everyone takes the show and figures it out, but like, going through and doing the service menu end of things is the less fun part, I guess, of like doing the project. So having some very practical examples of that would be like, that's super cool to see.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, so like for this one, and this is from my experience at shows, I have service menu options to disable high score modes because that takes up a lot of time at a show, to change like the ball save times, to change like some of the scoring values, and like anything that I might want to turn on or off or that might break or be weird, you put in a setting and then it's real quick to change it off.
Well, and I think also looking at the different configurations of things you might bring to the show, something to keep in mind is like, you don't need to bring your masterpiece complete 100% the entire experience. In fact,
have you seen the game I brought?
It's adorable, by the way. But I think that one thing to think about too is like for the casual player that's walking up and trying things out, someone called it like a tasting experience. Like, give me some quick ways to get to the multi-ball and try a couple of the fun things that we want to see. Don't make them, get to know every aspect of your long-playing game. The show experience is very different and stuff. So I think having those variable options is one way to, like, I guess, adjust for that experience. It's not going to make people, stay in line too long or enter their initials every time they did something that was okay. But.
Yeah, all of my games have had other settings for show modes. Yeah, to like start progressions a lot farther, to have fewer hits to activate things, fewer things to get multi-balls locked. Because really, it is about showing off what the game can do, not brace yourself for this epic, 2-hour adventure, which Mass Effect is. So.
Well, and I think also too that like what is interesting when you take your game out for the first time is like something that you might think was really fun and easy to get to. You're seeing the player never get to that, So being able to adjust that kind of stuff, like with configurations and settings, is really cool. Because again, like you're working your own game. You got those shots down. That's like muscle memory, automatic. You can hit that target every time. But for others that don't know your game, they might not hit it. So knowing you can adjust that, I think that's a pretty cool thing to do. Yeah. What else do we want to talk about? I mean, we could get really deep into this, but I don't think this is not the place for that.
We're out of time, but yeah, this is. Oh yeah, we've got a thing. We got a.
So, for everybody here that's endured us, like pretending we're making games in real time in front of everybody here, like we've got the homebrew mixer that we're doing at 8 o'clock tonight. So before you leave here, see me. I've got drink tickets I want to reward everybody for enduring this for. And we're going to, I think probably about 7:15, 7:30, we're going to start parading the games over there. So if you come by to play the homebrews later on, they're not here. We've gone to the hotel next door, the Marriott downtown, and we're in the Union Room. So at 8 o'clock, come and see us. It's not as loud as this place, and we can talk to the people that are working on the games and what their ideas were like in real time. So we'd encourage everybody to come and check it out, and it should be a good time.
Yeah.
Anthony, this was awesome.
Yeah, thanks
so much
for
doing
watching
this.
me write code. This is.
Thanks, guys.
All right, y'all. That was a great day of homebrew. We actually are going to, oh no, head up. Okay, you can hear me. Head up over to the hotel. Every time at this Northwest show, we do this little homebrew mixer where we cart all the homebrew games. We got 13 of them. We're going to move them into the hotel, into a private room. We'll have a bar there and some snacky, some hors d'oeuvres. And you can actually hear the games. You can talk to the creators without it being so loud in this game hall. So that's what we're going to head to do now. Tomorrow, let's get the screen up. Tomorrow, we start at 11 o'clock with Machines Making Machines, but I'm actually going to go live a little bit earlier, probably right around 10, and do a walkthrough of the homebrew and custom games on the lineup. I know I kept saying we were going to try to do it now, but I think it'll be a good fresh start tomorrow. The games are all back down here because we're about to move them into the big fun homebrew and customs train. Mighty Studios said, I had a lot of fun playing the homebrew today. BMO was really cool. I know, BMO's so cute. It's so exciting. We'll take lots of pictures and videos. I might do a Facebook Live upstairs or in the hotel during the mixer so you guys can get a little bit more gameplay action there. It's all dependent upon the internets. So if not, we will see y'all tomorrow at let's just say 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time with the first seminar starting at 11. See you guys later. Thank you so much. Yep, thank you. All right, for those still on Twitch, we are going to quickly, oh no, don't disable you. We are going to go raid Geek Gamers TV, maybe. It's a lot. So head over to twitch.com/Geek Gamer TV. You can watch some other cool seminars going on now.